Hey guys, tonight we head back in time to the icy silence of the Viking Age North. You're not just watching, you're there. You trudge up a frozen path, your breath already a fog, your boots soaked through, and the snow crunching underfoot. Like old bones, your nose burns, your eyelashes freeze. And no, that's not poetic. That's actual frost collecting on your face. You haven't even made it inside yet. You're going to learn the hard way. Why no amount of modern tough guy winter training can prepare you for this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and the current time in the comments. I want to know where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in Scandinavia, somewhere around the late 800s. The kind of cold that settles in here isn't just weather, it's a presence. It watches from the edges of the forest. It coils around the stones, and it will absolutely crawl into your bones by nightfall. The sun is lazy this time of year. It rises late, barely clears the horizon, and then sighs and sets before you've even finished your chores. You've got maybe 5 hours of daylight, and even that feels more like a hazy blue twilight. Everything else? Darkness. Deep, ink-soaked, wolf howling, foot-freezing night. And here's the kicker. Winter hasn't even reached its peak yet. You're dressed in layers that feel warm to your 21st century brain. Maybe you've got on thick socks, a down coat, thermal, leggings, even one of those scarves that doubles as a neck pillow. Cute. The locals take one look and smirk. You're already shivering, and it's only October. The Viking family you're joining has no central heating. Their longhouse squats low to the ground like it's bracing itself against the wind. You duck inside and are instantly assaulted, not by warmth, but by smell. The air is thick with damp wool, cooked fish, sweat, smoke, and something deeply. Go-a-tie. This is your new home for the next several months. No weekends away. No quick run to the coffee shop to thaw out. You'll be here shoulder to shoulder with people, livestock, and whatever survives the cold for the duration of the Viking winter. Historians still argue whether these homes were well insulated or barely tolerable. On one hand, sod roofs and packed earth walls created a sort of natural thermal bottle. On the other, you're still sleeping next to an open fire pit that smokes more than it heats. The chimney doesn't exist. The smoke is meant to rise and escape through a small hole in the roof, usually blocked with ice. So congratulations, your lungs are now as smoked as the fish hanging overhead. And about those fish, there are a lot of them. Dried, salted, smoked, and stacked like prehistoric protein bars. You eye them warily, realizing they're probably going to become 80% of your diet. The other 20%? Barley porridge, maybe a root vegetable or two if you're lucky. Your mouth already misses garlic naan. Still, as awful as the cold is, it's the length of winter that really messes with your head. It lasts 6 months or more. That's not an exaggeration. The Norse called the worst of it Jarl, the deepest dark. No feasting, no beer-chugging Vikings running around in horned helmets, which, by the way, they never actually wore. Just long, brutal stretches of survival. You step outside again to pee because there's no indoor plumbing, and nearly slip on a frozen puddle of something you don't want to identify. You stare up at the sky. No stars tonight. Just a heavy blanket of gray. But if you're lucky, maybe, just maybe, the aurora will show up later. Not because it's romantic, but because it'll remind you the sky is still there. You go back in, cheeks raw, and settle onto a straw-stuffed mattress that squelches faintly under your weight. No blankets, just animal hides. And yes, that hide still smells faintly of cow, or was it sheep? Either way, it's not subtle. One of the Viking children snorts in their sleep beside you. A dog is curled by your knees. You hear someone mutter in Old Norse about the stew needing more bones. Somewhere out in the dark, a wolf howls. Or maybe it's just someone having a very dramatic coughing fit. You exhale dot, so this is how it begins. Not with a dramatic snowstorm or a Viking raid, but with slow cold, bad smells, and the creeping awareness that you are extremely, hilariously underprepared. Sleep tight. You wake with a sneeze, a frozen one, the kind that sort of shudders out of you and immediately turns into regret. Your nose is crusted, your toes suspiciously numb. You blink, and a dusting of frost drifts off your eyelashes. No, that's not poetic exaggeration. That's real ice on your face inside the house. Welcome to your first real Viking morning. You're lying on a low wooden frame packed with straw and covered in pelts, which sounds cozy until you shift slightly and a small, very cold rat darts out from beneath your bedding like it owns the place. It kind of does. Above you, the ceiling beams sag under the weight of snow piling up on the turf roof. You hear the telltale drip-drip of meltwater snaking its way through the ceiling's thatch. If you're lucky, it'll just land in the corner and not on your forehead. If you're really lucky, it won't collapse entirely. You sit up and bump your head on a hanging fish. Breakfast. I guess the longhouse is an open plan in the way interior design influencers might dream of. It's one smoky, windowless hall where the family, the animals, and now you all try to stay warm together. The walls are earth-packed timber. The floor is a mess of straw, ash, and the occasional chicken feather. In one corner, an elderly sheep coughs in its sleep. You try not to think about how its wool might end up in your next tunic or soup. This was home for most Viking families, a long, narrow building with a central hearth and little else. And the materials? Local, rough, and available. Stone, wood, turf, animal dung. Imagine building a home entirely out of whatever was lying around and then trying to survive 6 months of Arctic chill in it. You notice something. No furniture, really. A couple of chests, a bench, maybe a low table. That's it. Vikings weren't into creature comforts. Mostly because the creatures had dibs on the comfort. You shuffled toward the central fire pit, hoping for warmth, and instead get a face full of smoke. The fire's low too low, and someone forgot to add more peat blocks last night. You poke around for kindling, only to be handed a frozen clump of something vaguely brown and definitely unpleasant. It's cow dung. Dried dung. To be fair, and once lit, it'll burn low and long, an absolute gift in a world where trees are scarce. But still, you're not quite emotionally prepared to become the person who proudly keeps a pile of flammable poop in the corner of the room. Historians still argue whether peat and dung were common across all Viking regions, or if wood use persisted in heavily forested areas. But one thing's certain: if it burns and won't poison you immediately, it's fair game. And speaking of poison, you notice a bowl of last night's stew still steaming faintly in the ashes. It's got a skin on top now. You poke it. It jiggles ominously. Breakfast? Someone grunts behind you and grabs the bowl. So, not yours, apparently. You glance outside. The door is a heavy slab of wood and fur, more barrier than actual door, wedged into a frame that creaks with the pressure of wind and frost. Light leaks in through the top and bottom edges, and with it, the scent of snow and wood smoke. You can already feel the air trying to get in. You're going to have to go out there eventually. That realization sits in your chest like a cold rock. In Viking winter, the house was the universe. People spent nearly all their time indoors once the deep cold hit. Farming ceased, raiding paused, travel became dangerous. You hunkered down and made yourself very small. There were only two priorities: keep the fire alive and don't die of boredom. There's an odd comfort in the routines of this frozen life. A boy nearby is patching his worn leather boots with sinew and bone needles. A girl is spinning wool into yarn by firelight. An old woman mutters to herself while stirring something in a clay pot that might be soup or might be soap. You notice they all wear layers thick, itchy woolen layers that have clearly been used, reused, mended, and repurposed beyond recognition. One guy seems to be wearing the same tunic inside out. On purpose. Viking clothing wasn't about fashion. It was about survival. Wool was the MVP insulating, even when wet, endlessly recyclable, and almost guaranteed to be scratchy enough to keep you awake at night. Linen existed, but only as an underlayer, and usually only for people who weren't, you. Your current outfit includes a homespun woolen tunic, coarse trousers, a long cloak clasped at the chest, and a pair of reindeer hide boots with stuffed hay for insulation. It sounds romantic until you realize the hay doesn't stay dry for long. Or clean, or particularly. Hey-smelling. You fumble with the clasp on your cloak and wonder how long you'll last. A week? A month? It hits you then. This isn't the kind of winter you get through. This is the kind of winter you become part of. You don't fight it. You shrink into it, like moss growing on a stone. Quiet, patient, cold. And just when you start to adjust, to settle into that slowness, your stomach growls. Loudly. Everyone turns to look at you. You smile awkwardly and try to look very, very grateful for the piece of smoked fish someone slides your way. It's dry, it's hard, it tastes like despair, but it's protein. And in this world, that's enough. You chew for what feels like 3 full minutes before you give up and just swallow the last chunk of fish like a pill. Your jaw already hurts, and you're pretty sure your teeth have become slightly looser in their sockets. That can't be. Good. So you ask, without actually speaking, because your throat's too dry if there's anything to drink. Someone hands you a wooden cup with what looks like cloudy water. You raise it cautiously. It smells faintly of moss. You sip. It's rainwater, probably. Or snowmelt. A bit of grit at the bottom adds texture, and this right here is your first real clue about Viking winter survival. Firewood is more precious than gold, and you don't get to waste it boiling water for no reason. The fire pit glows dimly with those chunks of peat and dung, but there's no roaring blaze, no crackling logs, no cozy fireplace like in your Pinterest board fantasies. Just a few stubborn embers, enough to keep the frostbite barely at bay. You want to help, maybe stoke the fire a bit. So you grab what looks like kindling and reach forward, only to be stopped by a thick-knuckled hand. A woman scowls and shakes her head. You were about to throw dried herbs onto the fire. Those were for medicine, not fuel. Nice try. Outsider. Historians still debate how often Viking homes actually had open fires burning all day. Some argue that firewood was hoarded and used sparingly, often limited to cooking hours only. Others think that inland forest communities had a bit more to spare. Either way, you're not getting a roaring hearth anytime soon. Instead, the family has a system. Keep the fire going just enough to warm the stones around it. The radiant heat from those stones carries into the floor and slowly makes the surrounding air tolerable. Not warm, not cozy, just survivable. And survivable is the highest compliment winter gives around here. You look around. There's no pile of firewood stacked near the door. No bundle of twigs in the corner. Instead, there's a basket filled with dry animal droppings, cut turf bricks, and charred bits of last night's cooking fuel. And, sitting proudly on a low shelf, a cow patty, shaped and sun-dried into a perfect little puck. You lock eyes with it. It wins. Eventually, you gather the nerve to step outside. You tell yourself it's for fresh air, but mostly you're desperate to move your legs. The door creaks open and you're hit with a wall of frozen mist that slides into your clothes like it owns the place. Within 3 seconds, your eyelashes freeze again. A new record. You walk around the sod house, if walking can even describe your stiff, penguin-like shuffle. Everything is still. The trees are bare. The air feels heavy, and the ground beneath your feet crunches like stale cereal. You pass a pile of fire-starting material drying on a wooden rack. It's not wood, it's peat, dug from marshlands during the warmer months, now frozen and crusted in snow. Peat is like prehistoric mulch. It burns slowly, smells like wet earth, and leaves behind clouds of sticky smoke that linger in your sinuses for hours. And then you see it, a narrow pile of chopped wood. Real wood, stacked neatly behind the house and guarded by what appears to be a very aggressive goose. That's probably the family's entire winter supply. Maybe enough for a few feast days or emergency illness. Not for casual ambiance. You back away respectfully. Still shivering, you return inside. The smoky interior suddenly feels warmer now, not because the fire changed, but because your standards have plummeted like a Viking overboard in February. You try to warm your hands by the embers, holding them just close enough not to singe your sleeves. Someone nudges a small iron pot toward the coals. Inside, a watery mash of barley, onions, and something that might once have been a turnip. You wonder how long they've been reheating this stew. You decide not to ask. You spend the next hour trying to help, which in Viking winter means doing anything that doesn't involve stepping outside. You grind grain between heavy stones, spilling flour all over your knees. You peel root vegetables so old they flinch at your touch. You sweep, which just moves the hay and ash around in decorative patterns. Then someone hands you a bundle of what looks like wool soaked in something oily. They light one end, and boom, you've just made your first Viking candle. It smells like rancid sheep, but it works. Quirky fact: Vikings often used fish oil or animal fat in their lamps and candles, especially during long winters. The smell? Not great, but it beat total darkness. Kind of. You settle down on a bench, breathing in the ancient aroma of smoke, sweat, and scorched herring. And just when you think you're adjusting, a child sneezes directly into the stew pot. No one blinks. The worst part: that stew is still dinner. You stare at the dancing candle flame, trying to ignore your frozen toes and aching back. It flickers against the wall, casting big shadows of things you hope aren't spiders. You can hear someone softly humming an old song in a language that sounds like stones rolling across ice. This is life in the longhouse. Damp, dim, dung-scented, and yet oddly grounding. You're not sure what time it is. There's no sun to check. Just endless shades of gray outside and flickering yellow inside. You sit in silence and wonder, if you had to do this for 5 more months, would you make it? Would anyone? You don't exactly wake up because, let's be honest, you didn't really sleep. You dozed. You hovered somewhere between consciousness and hypothermia, wrapped in animal hides and the lingering aroma of fermented herring. But it's a new day. Or at least, that's what someone says. It's pitch black outside, so you'll have to take their word for it. You stretch, and something cracks. Hopefully that was your back and not your spine giving up. Your joints ache from the cold. Your skin feels waxy, and your hair has officially become one solid object, crispy from the smoke and vaguely resembling a badger. You need a bath. You won't get one. The Viking Age winter wasn't exactly a time for spa treatments. Bathing was rare, more a summer luxury than a daily routine. You'd think the Norse, surrounded by snow and ice, would be the cleanest people alive. But the opposite was true. Water was everywhere, yes, but usable water. That meant hacking. Through ice with a dull axe, hauling it inside, heating it painfully slowly over dung-fueled fire, and trying not to spill any dust, so they adapted. Cleanliness became ... negotiable. Historians still argue whether weekly baths were common in Viking society, or whether they were more myth than habit. The word lagerdager, our modern Saturday, literally means bath day in Old Norse, which suggests that at least some kind of scheduled scrubbing happened. But in winter, that bath day might slide a few weeks, or months. You ask if there's a way to freshen up. A girl hands you a twig. It's a chewed stick, frayed at one end. A Viking toothbrush. You rub your teeth with it while she watches, unimpressed. No toothpaste, no mouthwash, just tree bark and judgment. You spot someone with a small pouch of lichen and charcoal, tooth powder. You ask to borrow a pinch and instantly regret it. The taste is somewhere between smoked gravel and sadness. Now, body odor. Let's not pretend. It's subtle. You've been wearing the same layers for days. Everyone here has. The wool absorbs everything. Sweat, smoke, dried meat scent. And it holds on to those smells with Viking-like tenacity. There are no soaps, no shampoos. If you're lucky, there might be ash soap made from leftover lye, but that's rare in winter. Most people just scrub it with snow and hope for the best. You consider stepping outside to wash in the snowdrift. You last 12 seconds. Your skin instantly goes from numb to screaming. You come back inside with a new appreciation for indoor stink. One guy, clearly a veteran of winter hygiene, shows you a trick. He rubs his skin with dry moss and a bit of pig fat. Exfoliating and moisturizing, he claims. You nod and slowly back away. The smell inside the longhouse isn't awful, but that's only because your nose has surrendered. Smoke from the fire masks most of it. And because everyone smells equally terrible, no one really notices. It's democratic funk. You try brushing your hair. A woman offers you a comb carved from bone. It's beautiful, intricate, and full of someone else's hair. You choose instead to tie yours back with a bit of string and pretend that's a style. Quirky. Fact. Archaeologists have found tons of combs in Viking graves. Personal grooming was actually important, but mostly for lice. Lice were everywhere, and those combs? Essential survival tools in a world where little creatures wanted to make your scalp their new winter lodge. You scratch your neck. Paranoia sets in. You notice everyone else doing something similar, checking each other for lice, casually picking through each other's hair like it's just part of breakfast. Which, in a way, it is. You shuffle over to the corner where a shallow basin holds cloudy water. It's for washing, which turns out to mean dabbing your face with a frozen rag and drying it with your sleeve. You do it anyway. It makes you feel human for 3 whole seconds, and then someone sneezes directly into your personal airspace, and the illusion collapses. Let's talk clothes. You're still wearing that thick woolen tunic, scratchy, hot, somehow also cold, and it's starting to develop its own personality. You swear it groans when you move. Underneath, your linen undershirt is stiff with old sweat. You try to peel it off and hear a disturbing tearing sound. It's either the fabric or your dignity. You attempt to dry your clothes by the fire. Big mistake. The smoke clings even tighter. You now smell like a smoked goat. A very anxious smoked goat dot outside. You hear someone chopping ice near the stream. They're collecting water for the animals, not for bathing. You can tell because they're humming cheerfully. No one hums while preparing a Viking bath. That's more of a weeping silently while trying not to freeze to death situation. You ask again, gently, if there's a way to clean up. Someone suggests sweating it out, which, in Viking terms, means the sweat lodge, essentially a sauna made of stones and steam. Your eyes light up. Then they explain, you heat stones in a fire, throw water on them in an enclosed space, sit inside with a bunch of other half-naked people, and sweat out all the filth while chanting or praying or complaining about goats. Afterward, you run outside and roll in the snow. Right. So that's the deluxe package. Too bad the sauna hasn't been lit in 2 weeks. And the snow, still waiting. For now, you make do. You tie your greasy hair back. Rub ash on your palms to hide the smell. Pat your cheeks to look refreshed. Someone hands you a dried sprig of juniper to chew. It doesn't help, but it makes. Your breath feels spicy. You lean back against the wall, sighing. You've survived another morning, unwashed, unbothered, and slightly smoky. You've given up on feeling clean. That ship sailed sometime around your second bite of cold barley mash this morning. But now comes your next great trial, staying warm without moving. Sitting still is a luxury you can't afford in this cold. Every moment your muscles aren't working, the chill creeps deeper in, like some smug little frost spirit licking your bones from the inside out. So you rise slowly and decide to investigate your Viking winter wardrobe. You've seen the locals layers upon layers of wool, leather, fur, and whatever else didn't rot in the last season. You figure you should do the same. So you reach into the communal trunk of garments, and what comes out looks, well, Sentient. It's a tunic. Maybe. Hard to tell under the patches. One sleeve is a different color entirely. The neckline has been resewn with what appears to be sinew, and it smells like it's seen things. But it's warm, and that's the only metric that matters now. The first thing you learn? Itchy is the default. Wool in the Viking Age was minimally processed, no soft merino, no fancy spun blends. Just rugged fleece sheared from sheep that probably growled when you touched them. It keeps you warm, sure, but it also gives you a new appreciation for modern underpants. Because guess what the Vikings didn't have? Softness or elastic. Or shame. You layer up. Linen undershirt, wool tunic, heavy cloak, woolen trousers, leather belt, and bonus fur mittens made from something that once had very sharp teeth. It's not a fashion show. It's survival. COSPL. A Y. Viking boots. Think. Leather bags tied around your feet, stuffed with straw. That's it. You jam your frozen toes into them and immediately understand why the people here walk like suspicious ducks. Historians agree that Viking winterwear was mostly homemade and deeply practical. And by practical, they mean you can tell the whole family's social status by how badly their pants sag. Richer folks had dyed wool, decorative trim, even imported silks on occasion. But you're strictly in the lumpy gray potato tier. You wrap a coarse wool scarf around your face. It smells faintly of goat. Again, always with the goat. You try to admire yourself in a reflective shield hanging by the door, only to remember it's been bashed in on one side and now gives you the cheekbone of a startled potato. You sigh. You're dressed like a warrior from a distant land, of questionable hygiene and zero insulation technology. One man in the household eyes your outfit and grunts approvingly. He offers you a hat. You accept, foolishly thinking it'll help. It's a coifa, tightly fitted linen head wrap that makes you look like a medieval baby. But hey, it keeps the heat in. Fashion is pain. And cold ears dot, then comes the real treat. The outer cloak dot, it's thick, fur-lined, and held shut with a heavy iron brooch the size of a toddler's fist. You fumble with it, nearly stab yourself, and finally manage to drape the cloak around your shoulders. You feel 10 pounds heavier. You also feel like maybe you won't die immediately if you step outside again. A boy walks past and snickers at how long it took you to gear up. You stare at him. He's barefoot. And he doesn't look cold. Which brings us to an ongoing scholarly debate. Did Vikings actually tough it out more than we give them credit for? Or have we over-mythologized their tolerance? Some accounts suggest children ran barefoot through snow and men went gloveless in icy fjords. Others say that's mostly poetic nonsense from sagas meant to sound impressive. Either way, you're not taking any chances. You step outside into what feels like the breath of a snow dragon dot. The wind hits your newly wrapped face with a dull slap. But your layered outfit holds, sort of. You walk stiffly, like a well-dressed plank. The snow crunches beneath your straw-stuffed boots. Everything creaks. You feel like a puppet made of blankets and trauma. You make it to the edge of the small animal pen. Goats huddle together for warmth, steam rising from their backs. Chickens mutter low, frozen in place like furry statues. A cow lifts her head and stares at you with the weary gaze of someone who's seen 10 winters and regrets all of them. You shuffle back inside. Victory. You peel off the outer cloak and immediately regret it. The chill creeps in like a burglar fast and familiar. You hug your arms, sit near the hearth, and sigh. Your breath hangs in the air, a ghostly ribbon. No matter how many layers you wear, your extremities are always losing the war. Your fingers, your nose, your toes, all on strike. The others are better at this. They move slowly, deliberately. They know when to stand by the fire, when to pile on more fur, when to press their backs together like little human radiators. You tried to mimic them, but you just looked like someone doing a bad impression of a cold squirrel. Then a woman points at you and laughs. She tosses you a square of fabric. You catch it. It's stiff, oiled wool, a windbreaker, Viking style. You tie it around your legs. It helps, barely. Let's not forget, there's no such thing here as dry clothing. The air itself is damp. Your breath condenses instantly. Everything smells like wet earth, fermented fish, and frustration. You finally settle down on a bench covered in animal skins and press your feet near the warm stones by the hearth. Someone hands you a cup of something hot, well, lukewarm. Broth made from boiled bones, herbs, and possibly a hint of dirt. You drink it. It tastes like hope dot, and then, just when you feel your fingers again, someone yells from outside. You're needed to help with something. You groan, stand, wrap yourself. Back in that smelly cloak dot time to go back out. Because staying warm in a Viking winter, that's a full-time job. You shuffle outside again, freshly bundled and already regretting everything. Your breath puffs out in thick clouds. The wind has picked up. It howls softly through the trees, curling between buildings like a bored spirit searching for exposed skin. Your job this morning? No glamorous warrior stuff. Just light work, fetching ice. That's right, ice, not water. Because the stream has frozen solid. And the only way to access drinking water now is by hacking at it, like you're trying to break into a glacier. Someone hands you a crude iron chisel and gestures to a nearby trough. You chip until your knuckles ache and your ears stop hearing. A chunk finally breaks loose, and you heave it into a bucket. It makes a hollow, cracking sound, like a warning. You want to melt it indoors, but that takes fuel, and as you've learned, firewood is strictly rationed. You'll have to toss it near the hearth and hope the ambient heat slowly works its magic. Until then, you are carrying solid, frozen hope. The light today is non-existent. Even though it's daytime, everything is bathed in blue-gray dusk. The kind of gloom that sucks the color out of everything. Your cloak looks like a different shade. Your hands look like someone else's hands. You squint up at the sky, but the sun, if it's out there, is playing a long game of hide dash and dash seek. Welcome to the polar twilight. Phenomenon that occurs in winter across high latitudes. You get light, but no real sunlight. Just a long, slow low on the horizon that never quite becomes day. Historians still argue how deeply the lack of light affected Viking communities. Was it a time of spiritual crisis, or just part of the rhythm of life? The sagas don't say much about seasonal depression, but you can't help wondering if the quiet tension in everyone's shoulders is more than just cold. You feel it creeping in already, this strange tiredness, like your bones are heavier. It's not exhaustion, it's something else. A slow, soft numbness. Inside the longhouse, people are quieter too. Less laughter, more muttering. Everyone's eyes carry the same message. We're only halfway through. The psychological toll of this darkness is real, even if they don't have a word for it yet. There's no concept of seasonal affective disorder. There's just surviving the night, which now lasts 18 hours or more. You return to the longhouse with your bucket of ice and set it near the hearth. It glistens dully in the firelight, refusing to melt. You watch it like a plant hoping for flowers. Someone coughs violently nearby, a deep, chesty rattle. You tense, just reflex. There are no antibiotics here, no lozenges. Just whatever herbs you managed to dry last summer, and maybe a prayer to Thor if it gets bad. You sit down and stare at the wall. Literally stare. There's nothing else to do. People pass the time as they always have, fixing things. A man sharpens an axe. A woman knits a sock that looks more like a funnel. A child recites old verses to the family dog. You try to help patch a hole in a fur cloak. You poke yourself twice with the bone needle and bleed onto the fur. No one notices or cares. You glance around the room and realize the line between rest and hibernation is very thin here. People curl into piles. No one speaks unless necessary. There's a kind of communal silence, a pact that says, we're enduring this together, but let's not talk too much about it. And the animals, don't forget the animals. Goats huddle in one corner, their breath rising like incense. The chickens stay surprisingly still, their little bodies tucked tight to retain warmth. The dog hasn't moved in 2 hours. You poke it gently to make sure it's alive. It groans and flips over. Viking homes weren't just people shelters. They were animal shelters too. Livestock were brought inside during the harshest months, not out of affection, but practicality. They generated warmth, acted as backup food sources, chicken, and occasionally offered companionship. Whether you wanted it or not. Quirky fact. Some longhouses even had partitioned stalls for animals inside. Others just let the animals roam freely at night. Which explains why your cloak smells vaguely like goat bladder. You press your hands near the fire again. The ice chunk in the bucket has begun to sweat. Progress. You can't help But notice how still time feels. There are no clocks, no alarms, no schedules. The only rhythm is hunger, light, and the occasional communal task. It's not peaceful, exactly. More like limbo. Cold, smoky limbo. A boy near the wall speaks softly. He's counting down the days to spring, not in a hopeful way, just a factual way. 53 more, he says. 53 days of this half-light, half-life state. You realize something important. Hope is currency in winter. Everyone here trades. In it quietly, like it's a black market secret. You look again at the pale shimmer of the sky outside. It hasn't changed. Your legs have gone numb from sitting. You stand, stretch, and immediately regret both actions. The cold has a sneaky way of ambushing your joints. You hobble around the longhouse like someone twice your age. Someone offers you a job, sorting fire starters. You nod. Anything to stay moving. You go to the corner and begin sifting through bundles of dried moss, bark strips, and mystery fuzz. Some of it smells like old soup. You don't ask questions, Dot, as the afternoon fades into, well, more dim afternoon. Someone lights another candle. A sliver of golden light flickers on the wooden walls. It dances across soot marks and old knife. Scratches, like the room is telling stories silently. You sit back down, wrap your cloak tighter, and try not to think about how much longer this night will last. Dinner arrives with little fanfare. Not that anyone expected fireworks. This is the 7th night of dried fish and cold barley porridge. You sit cross-legged by the hearth as a bowl is passed to you, its contents vaguely beige and lumpy, like someone tried to sculpt a sad hill and then gave up halfway. It smells like the ghost of something that once might have been nutritious. You steel yourself. You eat. Slowly duck the porridge is mostly oats, maybe barley, and some kind of rehydrated root. It's sticky. It's bland. It gets colder with every bite. You try not to chew too loud out of politeness, but there's a chunk of something unidentifiable that demands at least 3 full jaw clacks before surrendering. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This is a good night. Viking winter meals weren't about delight. They were about calories. Preservation was everything. Salted fish, dried meat, pickled vegetables, hard cheese. The problem? You get sick of them fast. There's only so many ways to prepare smoked herring surprise, and all of them taste like seaweed and regret. Glance at the others. No one complains. No one comments. They just eat. Slowly, steadily, like people who know exactly how many bowls are left before the food runs out, and that's the unspoken tension in the room. Rations. The stores are finite. The snow outside is endless, and even the most optimistic goat isn't producing milk right now. Everything that enters your mouth has already been counted. Historians believe Viking communities preserved most of their food during late summer and early autumn. They dried, salted, smoked, fermented, but without modern preservatives or even consistent ice boxes, things spoiled quickly. It wasn't uncommon for people to eat slightly off meat during winter, or chew bread that had gone a bit green. The mold, just extra flavor, quirky. Detail: Viking-age bread was sometimes baked with tree bark mixed into the flour. Not because it tasted good, but because it stretched the food supply. You haven't had the pleasure yet, but if you do, don't expect a crusty sourdough moment. Expect sawdust and sorrow. Tonight, the fish is dry. Exceptionally so. You soak it in your porridge like a crouton from hell. The flavor doesn't improve, but it becomes marginally easier to swallow. A child across from you holds up a piece of dried cod shaped like a boot sole and pretends it's a dragon tooth. Everyone laughs genuinely. It's the first real smile you've seen today. You realize something then, humor survives. Even here, even now, there's space for small jokes. It's a survival tactic as much as the porridge is dot after dinner. You help wash the bowls, which mostly means wiping them with a scrap of damp cloth and a smear of ashes. Soap is a myth. You give yours a sniff and immediately regret it. You stack the bowls and sit back down. Someone burps softly. The goat in the corner responds with a sound of profound judgment. The fire's low again. Not out. Just brooding. Someone tosses in a new peat brick. It sizzles, releases a puff of smoke, and smells faintly of bog and mushrooms. You fan the smoke away from your face and try not to cough. It's easier now. Your lungs are adjusting, which is not comforting. You close your eyes, just for a moment. Your stomach feels okay. Not full, but also not gnawing at your ribs like yesterday. A win, but the boredom? That's the real enemy. You reach into your satchel. Wait, no satchel. You reach into your brain and remember that entertainment doesn't live in screens here. It lives in stories. So you sit back, ready to listen. A man clears his throat. An elder. He begins telling a saga. You catch some of it, words about longships and betrayal, frost giants and cursed rings. The rhythm is slow, poetic, hypnotic. Everyone listens. Even the chickens seem vaguely engaged. This is the Viking version of Netflix. And it's good. You lose track of time. The room feels smaller, warmer, more alive. The elder speaks like the words are climbing out of the floorboards. You feel your heart slow. Your limbs relax. And then, just as the hero is about to slay whatever shadow beast the saga has conjured, the fire gives a sharp hiss. The peat brick collapses. Smoke surges upward, and with it, your peaceful haze is gone. You cough. Everyone else sighs like this happens hourly. Which it does. You glance around. A girl offers you a bowl of dried berries. You take one, chew. It's like eating tiny rocks soaked in vinegar. Still, it's fruit. Vitamin C, you vaguely remember that matters. No one wants to lose their teeth midwinter. You think about scurvy, and then wish you hadn't. As the night deepens, the smells intensify. Sweat, smoke, wet wool, goat. The fire's smoke drifts lazily overhead. Your eyes water. You blink and feel soot in your eyelashes. A man takes a flask from his belt and drinks. He offers you a sip. You accept. It's ale. Sort of. Warm, flat, weak, with a curious aftertaste that might be mushroom or pond. Still, it burns on the way down. You smile faintly, and suddenly, you understand why these people toast to surviving the night. You wake up in the dark. Not the gentle kind of dark that means early morning. This is the full, oppressive, smothering kind. It presses against your eyelids. The air is so still you can hear someone breathing across the room. You lie there, wrapped in stiff hides, listening. There's a goat near your head again. You don't open your eyes. You just accept it. A baby whimpers somewhere near the center of the longhouse. Someone hushes it with slow, rhythmic murmurs. The fire is a memory, now cold ashes, and the occasional stubborn ember glowing like a dying star. You know what this means. You have to get up. And you have to go to the toilet. A Viking winter outhouse is not a destination. It's an ordeal. A quest. A punishment from the gods for your hubris. You try to ignore your bladder. You try to think warm, distracting thoughts. But nature is louder than fear. You slip out from the furs, already regretting every decision that brought you to this moment. Your boots are stiff. Your cloak is damp, and your breath steams in the air like a guilty confession. You fumble for the fur curtain over the doorway and brace yourself. The cold hits like a slap made of knives. It punches straight through your clothes and settles in your bones like a bad tenant. You stagger outside, your boots crunching on ice. The wind whistles in a language you don't speak, but it sounds very rude. The toilet, such as it is a shallow pit dug near the edge of the property. No walls, no seat, just a wooden board stretched over a hole in the frozen earth, rimmed with frost and deeply questionable decisions. You shuffle over, muttering apologies to your own body. Historians call it a latrine. You call it a trap. There's no privacy, no warmth, no guarantee your backside won't freeze to the board. You hesitate, then sit very carefully, like a cat on a wet countertop. You breathe through your mouth. You stare at the horizon. There's a moon tonight, at least. It glows faintly behind thin clouds, casting the snow in a blue-white shimmer that feels too clean for what's happening. And then, just to complete the experience, the wind shifts. Let's just say your cloak does not provide full coverage. You finish your business in record time and stagger back to the longhouse like a war survivor. Your knees are numb. Your dignity is missing. Your body is questioning your life choices. You step back into the smoky warmth and almost weep with relief. Someone grunts at you, half asleep, and tosses a fur toward the hearth. You crawl under it. The goat beside you snorts and scoots a little closer. You're too tired to care. It takes a while, but the feeling in your legs returns. Unfortunately, so does the smell. Toilets in Viking life were often communal, poorly ventilated, and far from sanitary. Waste was sometimes collected to fertilize. Crops were simply frozen in place until spring. Lovely, quirky fact. Some archaeological digs have found parasite eggs preserved in old latrines, giving us an uncomfortably detailed glimpse into Viking digestion. You wish you didn't know that now. Sorry. Back under your hide pile, you stare at the beams above. You imagine a world with plumbing, heated seats, scented candles. And then the baby starts crying again. You shift. Someone kicks you in their sleep. A dog sneezes directly into your sock. Sleep? Optional. The sounds of night are unique here. You learn to distinguish between them. The moaning wind, the soft crackle of frost forming on the inside of the walls, the eerie silence of snow falling, the distant howl of a wolf lonely, somewhere beyond the ridge, but also the drunken mumbling of a neighbor, singing something slurred and Norse just outside the house. You blink. Yep, there he goes. Turns out, Viking men sometimes wandered outside to sing poetry to the stars after a few too many drinks, usually skaldic verse, sometimes improvised, always questionable. The lyrics tonight seem to involve fish and a goat. You decide not to translate. You sigh and roll over. The singing fades, replaced by the quiet creak of wood expanding in the cold. The wind has died down now. It's eerily calm. And that calm? That's worse. Because it means the temperature is dropping lower. In winter, the wind cuts. But stillness? That's when the real cold settles in. The kind that doesn't bite, it smothers. You pull your cloak tighter. The goat shifts again. Its body heat now less annoying and more lifeline. There's no midnight snack. No electric blanket. Just you, your layers, and the deep, endless dark. You try to picture the sun. It feels like a story someone once told you. A dream half remembered. Warmth is an old god you haven't worshipped in weeks. But tomorrow, you'll have to gather ice. Again, clear the animal stalls, fix the door hinges, maybe even walk to the neighbors, Farm to barter for dried apples. If you can still walk. You press your hands to your chest and breathe slowly. And in that stillness, you realize something. Most people never have to learn. There is no such thing as being warm, only being less cold. The morning begins with a sound somewhere between a groan and a grunt, possibly human, possibly goat, possibly both. You blink awake under a hide that smells like it died twice. Around you, the longhouse is stirring. People rise slowly, joints, cracking like firewood. No one speaks yet. Voices feel too loud for this kind of cold. The sky outside is a dark, bruised gray. The kind that suggests dawn is happening in theory only. You shuffle to the hearth. A woman is already there, coaxing. A reluctant flame from last night's embers. She's muttering softly in Old Norse, part practical instruction, part morning prayer. You sit near her for warmth. It's still not warm, but compared to the outdoors, it might as well be the surface of the sun. And then there it is. The sound howling long, distant, bone chilling wolves you freeze. Everyone else, however, barely reacts. One man casually scratches his arm and says something that translates loosely to, "They're early." You blink. You hope that's a joke. Turns out, in a Viking winter night, wolves are not background noise. They're a feature. They roam the edges of farms, drawn to the scent of meat, garbage, or unfortunate chickens. And when food gets scarce, as it does right about now, they get bolder. Historians still argue whether wolves were a constant threat, or more of a seasonal nuisance. Some sagas speak of heroic wolf battles. Others mention nothing at all, as if the danger was just expected, normal. You stare at the door. It's barred, heavy, not exactly reinforced. You can't help but picture a furry snout pushing through a crack, sniffing for stew. But wolves aren't the only nighttime soundtrack around here. As daylight seeps faintly through the wall slats, other noises pick up. There's a clatter of pots. A child sneezes violently, then keeps sneezing for an unsettling amount of time. Somewhere near the entrance, a man sings very badly while fumbling with boots, and next to the hearth, a woman begins, humming an old song, melancholy, slow, probably about someone who froze to death on a fishing trip. Just guessing. Then comes the crowning jewel of Viking sound design, the drunk neighbor. He returns, finally, from wherever he wandered last night. You hear the soft thud of him tripping over something, followed by a muttered curse. The door flap opens briefly long enough to let in a blast of cold and a cloud of snowflakes, and in he stumbles. His face is red. His beard is full of frost. He smells like weak ale and stronger choices. Everyone looks at him. No one is surprised. Turns out, Viking communities had their fair share of night wanderers. Long winters, limited entertainment, and homemade alcohol made for some interesting evenings. While Viking ale wasn't exactly strong, more like thick, grainy soup with a buzz, it didn't take much to loosen tongues and judgment. The man mumbles something about a sky fox and sits down heavily on a bench. He unwraps his cloak, releasing a burst of cold air and a feather. No one asks. You're too tired to even process it. You lean against the wall and try to nap sitting up. But sleep is impossible, now that the chickens are awake. And they are loud. Had hoped the animals might remain quiet, like furry furniture. They do not. The chickens cluck like it's a political rally. The goats shuffle and complain. One of them has learned how to nudge open the storage chest, which is now a problem. A child chases it with a wooden spoon. The goat wins. You try to escape this barnyard circus by stepping outside. The cold meets you like an old frenemy, familiar, unkind, and fully committed to ruining your morning. You wrap your cloak tighter and trudge toward the animal pen. You're on chicken duty today. You don't remember volunteering, but here you are. Feeding chickens in a Viking winter is a deeply humbling experience. You carry a frozen bucket of grain, sprinkle it into the snow, and watch as the chickens judge you with cold, glassy eyes. They peck, they squabble. One pecks your boot. Another tries to steal your glove. You wonder how these birds even survive. Out here, the answer is barely. Most Viking farms expected losses during winter. Chickens froze. Goats stopped producing milk. Pigs were often slaughtered before winter even began. You look at the pig pen, empty, smart. You scatter the rest of the grain and back away before they unionize. Then you hear it again, howling, closer this time. You freeze, grain bag halfway to the ground. A dog barks inside the longhouse. A man steps outside, squinting toward the tree line, and then you see it, just for a second. A dark shape at the edge of the woods, large, loping. Gone. The man mutters, spits, and goes back inside. Apparently, this is normal. You follow, your legs moving a little faster now. Back inside, the longhouse feels crowded with bodies and smoke and stale breath. You sit by the fire. The others glance at you, half amusement, half, you're still alive? Neat. The day passes in sluggish silence. No stories yet. No chores worth mentioning. Just the slow melting of snow in buckets, the mending of cloaks, the occasional retelling of last winter's wolf encounter where someone definitely exaggerated how close they were to being eaten. And when night comes again, and it always does, you pull your cloak around your shoulders, wedge yourself between a goat and a kid with cold feet, and brace for another round of wind, wolves, and one-liners in Old Norse. Sleep isn't restful, but it's better than standing outside with the chickens again. You wake up needing to pee again. No, absolutely not. Your body insists. You try bargaining. Just 5 more minutes. Just let me sleep until the fire gets going. Just no. It's not happening. The bladder always wins. You groan softly and prepare yourself for the worst part of every Viking night. The walk to the outhouse, or, more accurately, the snow pit of shame. You slide out from under the furs like a guilty ghost, trying not to wake the family goat who's been spooning you for heat. Your boots are stiff again. Your cloak smells like damp wool and old stew. You take one cautious step and immediately realize the fire went out completely, which means the temperature inside is only slightly better than outside. Someone mutters in their sleep. A child kicks in a dream. The longhouse is filled with the sighs and snores of humans surviving by sheer stubbornness. You envy them. Outside, the wind is screaming again. It seems louder at night, like it knows you're vulnerable and would like to make a point. You clutch your cloak tighter and push through the fur flap that serves as a door. The cold hits you in the chest like a punch made of icicles and disapproval. Your breath freezes instantly. You exhale and it sparkles. Pretty. Awful. The snow crunches under your boots with every step. The moon is high, bathing everything in ghostly light. You keep your eyes on the path to the pit latrine, praying no wolf decided to hold a meeting nearby. You arrive. You squat. You curse your ancestors, your decisions, and the structural engineering of 9th century Scandinavia. When you're done, you race back to the longhouse like it's base camp on a doomed expedition. You fall back into the furs, frozen, trembling, proud of your survival and deeply annoyed by it. You close your eyes. You drift off, only to be woken again. This time by arguing. Inside the longhouse, two brothers are bickering in hushed, heated Old Norse. You catch the gist. Someone forgot to salt the meat, and now there's spoilage. Supplies are tight. Tensions are tighter. Welcome to Cabin Fever. Viking Edition. People aren't built to stay cooped up together for months on end in one smoky room full of goats, screaming babies, and dried fish. And yet, here you all are. Historians often speculate about the psychological toll of Viking winters. The sagas don't say much about emotional burnout, but then again, they also leave out bathroom trips and goat farts. The emotional cracks were there. They just didn't make it into the poetry, and they're cracking now. One of the brothers storms outside in a huff. Bold choice. That's a tantrum with frostbite consequences. You hear him stomp off into the dark, grumbling and muttering to himself like a Norse Hamlet. Another man mutters about wasting firewood on temper tantrums. The rest of the house settles into silence, but you feel it. The frayed nerves. The way every sigh now sounds just a bit sharper. You pull the furs higher over your face and try to disappear by morning. The brother has returned. Frost clings to his beard. His eyebrows have little icicles on them. He sits down, says nothing, and stares into the fire pit for a long, long time. Someone hands him a piece of jerky. Apology accepted. The day unfolds like most others now. Slow, smoky, repetitive. You help sweep the floor, mostly moving ash from one end to the other. You fetch snow to melt. You restack the peat bricks. Every task is either too cold, too smoky, or done while squinting in half darkness. But things are tense. People bump into each other more. They sigh louder. There's passive-aggressive cloak folding. One woman glares at a man for sneezing too close to the stew. The goat refuses to share its corner of warmth. Even the dog, usually too tired to care, growls when someone steps on his tail. This isn't just grumpiness. This is what happens when night never ends. You think about modern winter's heated homes, Netflix, vitamin D supplements, scented candles. And then you look around at your current reality, smoky air, fish for the 7th day in a row, and people slowly losing their minds in wool. The Viking winter isn't about action. It's about endurance. Quirky fact. Some Viking households had rituals to ease the long dark, lighting certain candles, telling the same story every week, singing lullabies to keep spirits away. Not because they believed it would change the season, but because it gave the illusion of control, and control is precious. That evening, an elder woman begins humming one of those lullabies, slow and low. The tune is simple, repetitive. A chant. Really, everyone quiets. Even the animals seem to pause. You feel the tension in the room melt slightly. Not vanish, but settle. She keeps singing as she stirs the pot of evening stew. It smells slightly different tonight. A hint of herbs? A scrap of meat that doesn't come from a sea creature? Is this a special night? Someone smiles. That's rare. And then you hear it. A fart loud. Defiant. The room goes absolutely silent. And then someone laughs. A snort. Then a full laugh. Then 3 people are chuckling. Even the grumpy goat bleats in what sounds suspiciously like amusement. You realize something important. It doesn't take much to save a winter night, a song, a joke. Even an accidental blast of comedy. The fire is warmer tonight. Or maybe you just feel lighter. You pull your cloak tighter, lie back on your itchy bed of straw, and smile faintly into the smoky dark. Tomorrow will probably be the same. But tonight, at least, you laughed. You wake up to shouting. Not the usual someone dropped the stew pot kind of shouting. This is sharper, clipped, urgent. You sit up too fast, hitting your head on the low wooden beam overhead. Excellent start. Everyone's stirring now. Cloaks are pulled on hastily. Someone knocks over a bench. A baby starts wailing. You rub your eyes and catch snippets of the argument near the entrance. Apparently, the food stores have been disturbed. Again. You crawl out from your warmish nest of hides and shuffle over. A few sacks have been moved. One looks slightly torn. The dried fish that was stacked neatly in a corner now lies scattered on the floor, half of it licked, half of it missing. There are goat prints everywhere. You look at the goat. The goat looks away, extremely guilty. The family argues about it in low, fast old Norse. You catch enough to know this is the third time in 2 weeks something like this has happened. And every time, it ends with someone shouting and someone else storming off to sulk near the chickens. But this time, the shouting lasts longer. You sit quietly on a bench as the fire crackles and someone angrily stabs a ladle into a pot of thin broth. The air feels heavier than usual. The long night is wearing everyone down. Winter in Viking lands wasn't just physically hard, it was psychologically relentless. There's no sunlight to regulate your internal rhythms, no variety in tasks. Number. End in sight. Days bleed into nights, into more nights. And eventually, you start to feel like you're unraveling just a little bit each day. You try to keep to yourself. You stir the fire, patch your mittens, organize the kindling pile. It helps for about an hour. Then someone steps on your foot. You don't even mean to snap, but you do. Watch it. The room goes still. Everyone turns to look at you. A child gasps, then someone grins. A quiet, amused grin. You've become part of it now. The shared irritation. The invisible tension wire that strings across the ceiling and hums, louder with every passing night. Cabin fever has its own rhythm. First, it's whispers, then sighs, then flare-ups over who moved the peat pile or who forgot to brush the straw. Out of the stew. Eventually, it bubbles over into what you're witnessing now. Low-grade, persistent irritation, sprinkled with exactly 3 seconds of regret. You sit back down. Someone starts playing with a bone dice game. It clatters across a carved wooden board. No one's really watching. It's just something to do. Movement, even meaningless, is precious now. The fire flickers in strange patterns. You realize you've been staring at it for who knows how long. Time isn't real here. It's just before stew and after stew now. The stew tonight is different. You eat quietly and try not to think about why the meat is stringier than usual. The dog is missing. You do the math and then stop. Some mysteries don't need solving. A young woman drops a ladle mid-serve and sighs, long and loud. Enough of this, she mutters. Someone else groans. You think it's easy? Go fix the smoke hole then. Maybe I will. You won't. You'll fall off the roof again. The bickering resumes. It's tired, almost affectionate. Like siblings who've been stuck in the same cart for a week. You can see the outlines of these people now, not just Viking stock. Characters, but fully fleshed humans cracking a bit at the edges. Historians still debate how communal longhouse life affected social dynamics. Were Viking families closer because of the physical proximity? Or did they become experts at passive-aggressive silence? Hard to say. What we do know is that these winters taught people to endure each other, like it or not. You volunteer to take the goat out. Anything for a breath of fresh, frost-bitten air. Outside, the night is velvet black. Stars shine like frost pinholes. Your breath clouds instantly. The goat trots ahead of you, unconcerned by the cold. You look up at the stars and wonder how many. People across how many centuries, have stood in this exact spot and hated everyone in their house just a little bit. The goat peas. You take that as a sign to return. Back inside, the argument has faded into weary silence. Someone's carving something by firelight, probably another spoon. There are so many spoons now. You could open a shop. No one would come, but you'd have a lot of spoons. A child is snoring. Loudly, a man tosses and turns. A woman stares into nothing. You lie back down and feel your body stiffen from the cold again. It's only December. That hits you like a cold slap. You've been here, 3 weeks? Maybe less? And already, every conversation feels loaded. Every noise too loud. Every meal the same. There's a saying from somewhere far in the future. Hell is other people. You think maybe that person spent a winter in a Viking longhouse. You're woken by a sneeze. Not a cute little one either. This is the kind that sounds like a bear's cough. Wet, violent, echoing through the longhouse like an omen. You crack one eye open. It's still dark. Of course it is. But the room feels different. People are stirring, slower than usual. The fire hasn't been touched. No one's grinding grain or snapping at the goat. It's quiet, too quiet, and cold in a way that suggests no one wanted to get up and risk frostbite to relight. The hearth that you sit up. The woman beside you is bundled deep into her cloak, her cheeks pale, her eyes glassy. You catch a glimpse of her wrist red blotches, faint trembles. Someone's sick. You shift slowly, not wanting to draw attention, but already there are whispers in the corners. A child has a fever. A man has been coughing for 2 days straight. Someone else hasn't moved much since yesterday. You suddenly become hyper-aware of your own throat, dry, a little. Is that a tickle, or just paranoia? Here's the thing no one likes to admit. Viking winters weren't just cold, they were contagious. No fresh air, no ventilation. Everyone breathing the same smoky air in a room packed tighter than your average subway car. Illness spread like spilled soup across straw, and they didn't have much to fight back with. You glance around at the common makeshift medicine station in the corner, a bundle of dried herbs, a bowl of slightly green honey, and a carved spoon someone's been calling. Lucky. You're not inspired with confidence. One of the older women begins mashing something in a stone bowl, maybe garlic, maybe a root of questionable origin. She adds water, some kind of moss, and stirs. The result looks like regret in paste form. She dabs it on the sick man's forehead. He groans. That's about the extent of Viking healthcare. Historians have pieced together some Viking remedies: garlic poultices, onion stews, ash infusions, honey compresses. Some of them may have had mild antibacterial properties. Others probably just kept your mind busy while your body did whatever it was going to do anyway. You hear someone whisper, "We're running low on onions," which apparently is a serious issue. You try to be helpful. You offer to fetch snow, to stir the stew, to chop more peat. But your eyes keep drifting back to the sick. You count them. 4, maybe 5 looking worse than yesterday. Someone mentions, "That last winter, 2 old men passed within a week of each other. Pneumonia, most likely, or the cold, or both." In Viking life, the line between fever and funeral was very, very thin. Quirky fact: Norse burial customs varied, but many. Winter deaths were delayed literally. The ground was too frozen to dig graves. Bodies were wrapped, stored, sometimes even buried under snow until spring. You think about that as you pass the supply room, eyeing a particularly large sack with new creases. Too early to ask questions. The day drags slowly. No one's in the mood to bicker today. Everyone moves gently, as if afraid to jostle the air too much. You peel root vegetables without being asked. A child sits beside you, coughing into a scrap of wool. You pretend not to notice when she wipes her nose with it and then hands it back to her mother like it's a gift. At one point, the old man by the fire starts humming a tune, low and slow. It's not cheerful, but it holds the room together for a while. It sounds like something you'd sing to keep away spirits. You hear the phrase "hell's breath" whispered nearby. It's what they sometimes called winter illness, Hel, the Norse goddess of death, exhaling into the lungs of the weak. Creepy, poetic, and honestly fitting. You don't know if you believe that, but you pull your cloak tighter anyway. That night, the longhouse settles into silence faster than usual. No stories. Number. Dice games. Just quiet, creaking wood and the occasional cough like a punctuation mark. You lie awake longer than you want to. The fire is low again, more glow than flame. The air smells like boiled onions and smoke. You feel your heartbeat in your fingertips, slow and steady. Someone stirs in the dark. A man walks softly to the sick child, checks her forehead, murmurs something you don't catch. The child doesn't wake. You think of your own family, somewhere far, far in the future, or maybe just far away. You wonder how they'd handle this kind of winter, if they'd know what to do. If you do, you close your eyes and try not to listen for coughing, but you hear it anyway. The house breathes in sickness now. The next morning comes slow and gray. Not that you saw the sun. The light just shifts slightly. The ceiling brightens from pitch black to dusty charcoal. Somewhere a rooster mumbles half-heartedly and gives up halfway through the crow. No one really gets up anymore. People just stop lying down. You sit up slowly, cautiously checking your joints, your throat, your stomach. Everything feels vaguely wrong, but not sick wrong. Just still alive in winter wrong. A dull ache behind your eyes. A weight in your ribs. You take a breath. Still here. Across the longhouse, someone throws up into a wooden bucket. You quickly look away. Breakfast is more of a formality than a feast. A thin gruel made from leftover barley, water, and exactly one dried berry for flavor. You chew it with the enthusiasm of someone eating a cold sponge. Then, as you rinse your bowl with a handful of snow, you hear the word that perks everyone's. Heads up, call on me. A man grins crookedly and opens a small leather jug. He sloshes it theatrically, as if he's just pulled out a bottle of champagne. Everyone in the longhouse watches him like a hawk, watching another hawk with better snacks. He pours a little into a carved wooden cup, takes a swig, and sighs deeply. Warm, he says, which is optimistic. You get handed a sip. It tastes like fermented bread and pine needles. There's a hint of something earthy, possibly mushrooms. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles knowingly. One of those batches. C. Viking alcohol wasn't always just a pleasant way to unwind. Sometimes it came with a side of hallucination. Mushrooms were occasionally added to drinks, accidentally or otherwise, and what you got was a strange evening full of prophetic dreams, giggling fits, or someone challenging a goat to a duel. The exact ingredients of Norse brews varied wildly. Some were thick with honey and herbs. Others tasted like bitter regrets and river water. What they had in common was this: they were never cold. Because cold drinks? That was for summer. Tonight, the longhouse drinks. Not heavily, not wildly. Just enough to take the edge off. Enough to remember that there are still ways to feel something in the long dark. You sip again. The warmth spreads through your chest like weak candlelight. Your fingers tingle just a little. The boy beside you giggles into his cloak. The woman across from you starts humming a tune with no melody. Someone begins tapping a rhythm on a carved bowl. You feel almost festive. And then the singing begins. It's not good singing. It's the kind of singing that drifts in and out of key like a drunk traveler in a snowstorm. But it's full of heart. One man starts chanting in a deep voice about a whale that swallowed a boat. A woman counters with a lullaby about a sun that forgot to rise. A child tries to rhyme snow with goat, fails spectacularly, and earns a round of applause. It's absurd and delightful. You forget about your aching joints. You forget the cough in the corner. You even forget, briefly, that the goat is now trying to chew your hood. For one fragile hour, the longhouse becomes something else. Not a tomb, not a trap, but a little cave of defiance, people refusing to let winter eat them whole. Historians still argue how central alcohol was to Viking daily life. Was it sacred? Practical? Just a distraction? The sagas are full of drinking scenes, but modern scholars debate whether this reflected real life or just narrative flair. What we do know is that mead, ale, and beer were important in winter, not just for celebration, but because water wasn't always safe. Brewing made it drinkable, and, as you're experiencing now, bearable. The mead runs out too quickly, of course. It always does. The laughter fades into sleepy murmurs. The candlelight flickers low. Someone trips on their way to the bedroll and lands with a muffled curse. The baby snores. Loudly. You lie down again, the warmth of the drink still swimming in your chest. Your thoughts fuzz at the edges, but sleep doesn't come immediately. Your head is light, but your heart feels heavy. Because outside, in the endless dark, winter hasn't moved. It's still there, crouched just beyond the door. The cold waits. The hunger waits. The long days still stretch ahead, and the sickness hasn't left. But for now, inside, people sleep with slightly looser shoulders. The goat has finally settled. Even the fire seems a little less spiteful. You smile, barely. You didn't expect to drink Viking mushroom wine with strangers and find comfort in bad singing. But here you are, still. Alive, still cold. But oddly, a little less alone. You wake up to a sharp tug on your cloak and a whisper in your ear. Up, it's your turn. Your turn for what? You're not sure. But the look on the woman's face tells you that arguing isn't an option. She hands you a crude wool cap, one that looks like it's been chewed on by at least 2 different species, and points toward the doorway. Great. You fumble for your boots, which are frozen stiff again. One goat is standing on one of them. It refuses to move. You argue with the goat quietly, lose, and slide the other boot on anyway. Turns out, it's your turn to stand watch. Yes, apparently this household takes turns listening for wolves, thieves, or anything else stupid enough or desperate enough to creep around the settlement at night. You hadn't realized this was a thing. It is. And now it's your thing. Someone hands you a wooden staff. It's more ceremonial than effective, but it gives your hands something to do besides freeze. You step outside and immediately regret every life decision you've ever made. The cold is different tonight. Not the kind that nips at you or makes your nose run. This cold cracks. It bites so hard it makes your bones ache. Your breath forms thick clouds that curl back toward your face and freeze into your eyelashes. Again. The sky. Though the sky is alive, above you, the northern lights are dancing. Long green ribbons stretch and shimmer, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Hints of purple and blue trail behind. It's like someone poured celestial ink across the heavens and stirred it with a silent hand. You freeze not because of the cold, but because it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and it's completely silent, not a sound. Just a glowing sky above a frozen world that isn't trying to impress anyone. It just is. You almost forget you're holding a club and watching for wolves. Almost. Then you hear a rustle near the fence. You whip around. Heart thudding. A shadow shifts. Then another. You raise the staff like a slightly confused shepherd. You squint into the dark, and out comes a pig. One of the neighbor's pigs escaped, snuffling around like it owns the place. It trots over to the firewood pile and lies down. Like it's made the best decision of the evening, you lower your staff. The adrenaline fades. You're annoyed and freezing, and now vaguely jealous of a pig. You shuffle over to the fence line, checking for tracks. You see some long, narrow prints that could be wolves or dogs or really dramatic goats. You poke the snow for a while. Nothing moves. Just the wind. After a while, your limbs begin to hurt. Not ache hurt. The kind of pain that says, hey, you're 1 degree away from frostbite. Maybe don't. You stomp your feet, slap your arms, hum an old tune you only sort of remember. Anything to stay awake. Anything to keep the blood moving. That's when the door creaks open behind you. It's the woman from earlier. She hands you a steaming wooden cup. Warm milk, she says. You blink. It's the closest thing to a miracle you've received all week. You cradle it in your hands like treasure and sip. It's not good. It's gritty and tastes like goat, but it's hot. And that's what matters. You thank her in whatever mangled Norse you've picked up. She smiles faintly and returns inside. You take another sip. The lights are still dancing, and suddenly it hits you. This is it. This is what surviving winter really means. It's not epic. It's not heroic. No grand battles. No roaring fires. And horned helmets. Just small, gritty, quiet choices. You drink the bad milk. You chase the dumb pig. You stay up when your body says sleep. You learn to love the sky because sometimes that's the only color you'll see for weeks. You're cold. You're tired. You're slightly crusted in goat hair, but you're still here. You finish the last of the milk and knock snow off your boots before heading back inside. Your hands barely work as you undo the door fastenings. You stagger in and close it behind you. The warmth hits like a blanket, even if it's only 5 degrees warmer than outside. Someone shifts to make room for you. You fall into the spot. Cloak and all, too frozen to care. The fire crackles softly. A child is snoring again. The sick man groans once and quiets. You close your eyes, and even though your back hurts, your feet are damp, and your mouth tastes like slightly fermented goat. You feel something you haven't in days. Call on peace. Just a little. Just enough. You're dreaming of warmth. Not fire. Not sunlight. Just not cold. That's all your dream asks for. A vague sensation of being able to move your fingers without them feeling like wood. No boots. No frost. No goat staring directly into your soul. And then someone shakes your shoulder. Hard. You jolt awake. Limbs tangled in fur. Heart hammering. It takes a moment for the world to sharpen. You're still in the longhouse. The fire has gone low again. Just a dull glow in a heap of ashes. Around you, people are murmuring. Alert, but not panicked. Something's wrong. A child stands near the wall, pale and sweaty, coughing in wet, rattling bursts. The kind of cough that doesn't just sound sick, it sounds final. People are gathering. Herbs, rags, bowls of snow. There's urgency in the way they move now, a rhythm faster than anything you've seen since arriving. Someone waves a hand at you. You fetch water. You stir something. You hold a bowl under a shaking chin while a grandmother mutters to the gods under her breath. It's not working. The boy no more than 6 has sunken eyes and flushed cheeks. His breath is short, fast, uneven. The others are watching with a mix of fear and familiarity. You realize they've done this before. Viking medicine is a patchwork of what worked once, what feels spiritual, and what's been passed down through generations. There are no sterile tools, no antibiotics, no doctors, just wisdom, guesswork, and onions. Yes, onions. The woman closest to the boy is chopping one now, fast and rough. She mixes it with garlic, some moss, and a dab of honey. The resulting paste is slathered onto his chest like a pungent blanket. The room fills with its scent, sharp, earthy, alive. Historians know the Vikings used onion and garlic poultices to fight infections. And strangely, some modern studies suggest this might have had some antibacterial merit. But for something like pneumonia, it's like trying to stop a snowstorm with a candle. Still, they try. You help hold the child upright. His head lolls. He opens his mouth, tries to speak, and fails. You feel useless. You're not from here. You're from a world where this child would be in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines. You know how to Google symptoms, not how to save. Someone in a one-room house with nothing but boiled bark and hope. He finally sleeps or passes out. Either way, he goes quiet. The room breathes out together, but no one relaxes. They all know what quiet can mean. Someone places a carved wooden token under his furs, a small image of Thor, barely the size of your thumb. A protector or a farewell. It's hard to say, and then life goes on. That's the cruel truth of Viking winter. There's no pause button. A baby needs feeding. A goat knocks over the firewood pile. Someone has to go break the ice at the stream again. You're sent with them. Outside, the cold slaps you awake. The sky is a dull smear of gray. The air smells like pine and something faintly burned. You and the man with the chisel walk in silence to the stream, now more of an ice sculpture than a water source. He chips. You carry. You don't speak. What would you say? Eventually, he breaks the silence. He might live, he says simply. You nod. He might. Neither of you say the other half of the sentence, but he also might not. You return with your arms full of ice. It plinks like broken glass. You dump it into a basin near the hearth and step back, shaking out your fingers. The longhouse is quieter. Today, people speak less. They move more slowly. No one plays dice. No one tells stories. Grief hangs in the corners like frost, waiting to settle. And still, they work. Someone is mending the roof where snow has caved a bit. A woman is cleaning out the food stores, checking for mold, counting what's left. A boy is sharpening a knife, his face blank, because if there's one thing Viking life teaches you, it's this: you survive by moving, one foot, then the other, one chore, then the next, even when a child is gasping for air in the corner, even when spring feels like a myth, even when your soul just wants to lie down and disappear into the heights and become something the cold forgot. That evening, they serve soup. It's thin, mostly broth, but there's meat in it. Real meat. You don't ask where it came from. No one does. You eat. You listen to the fire crackle. You glance toward the child's bed. He's still breathing. Barely. You lie down. Back aching. Eyes dry. Throat raw. You dream of sun. But even in your dream, your breath fogs. The child lives. Barely. You wake to the wheeze of his breath, sharp and shallow, but rhythmic. The kind of sound that lets you exhale Not because it's better, but because it isn't worse. His mother hasn't slept. She sits beside him, eyes hollow, fingers moving over a string of carved beads she keeps hidden beneath her cloak. One for each god, perhaps. Or one for each winter she's survived. Either way, you don't ask. You just sit near the fire and listen. Today, no one fights. No one jokes. The house is wrapped in silence, like it's bracing for news that hasn't yet come. And then, someone calls you to the far end of the longhouse. There's a bundle of fur there, tied neatly, waiting. You're being sent on an errand. Not a long one, just a visit to a nearby farmstead to check on trade. They may have garlic, or honey, or dried apples if the gods are smiling. You wrap yourself in every layer you own. 2 cloaks. 3 pairs of socks, only one of which matches. A scarf that smells like old soup. You are, essentially, a walking laundry pile. They hand you a small pouch barley, smoked fish, and one beautifully carved bone comb. Your bargaining chips. And a warning, don't take the forest path. You nod solemnly. Then immediately take the forest path. Because you are tired and cold, and the longer, safer road is snowed in. You tell yourself it'll be fine. And for a while, it is. The forest is still, muffled in snow. The trees bend under the weight, limbs drooping like sleepy giants. Your boots crunch with every step, and a scarf traps your breath against your face until your eyelashes start sticking together. It's beautiful in the way. Dangerous things often are. But the cold isn't just scenery, it's strategy. It waits until you're halfway through the woods, then tightens its grip. Your fingers stop feeling like fingers. Your cheeks burn. You start making weird bargains in your head. If I get to the farm alive, I will never complain about wet socks again. You keep moving. Slowly. The cold plays tricks on your hearing. You think you hear footsteps behind you. Maybe a branch breaking. Maybe whispering. You stop. Hold your breath. Nothing. Then something. A gust of wind. A whisper. A crunch not made by your boots. You move faster. The forest opens up just as you start to feel your limbs go stiff. There, across a small frozen stream, is the neighboring longhouse. Smoke curls from its roof, lazy and inviting. You could cry. They let you in without questions. You are handed something hot, herbal tea, maybe. You can't taste it. Doesn't matter. You explain the trade. They nod. You exchange your bundle for a pouch of dried onion flakes and one small sealed jar of something sticky. They claim it's honey. You believe them. Then comes the storytelling, because it always does. You sit in the corner by the fire, surrounded by people you've never met, and listen to tales. One man speaks of a time he fought off 3 wolves with only a stick and a sack of flour. Another swears he saw a draugr, the undead, wandering the woods just last winter, covered in frost. And hungry for warmth. You laugh politely. Then cough. Then realize you might be feverish. They offer you a place to stay the night. But you decline, because back at your longhouse, a child is still sick. And garlic doesn't deliver itself. You leave at twilight. The forest path is worse. In the fading light, every shadow looks like a figure. Every sound feels closer. You walk faster. That's when you hear it again. Footsteps. Not behind you this time. Beside you. Then gone. You stop. The trees creak. The wind shifts. Then a whisper, just above hearing. A phrase in Old Norse you almost understand. Or maybe it's just the wind laughing. You don't run. You walk, steady, purposeful, like someone who belongs here. You burst into the longhouse an hour later, half frozen, fully exhausted, and a little bit terrified. Someone takes the bundle from your hands and hugs you, which is unexpected and strangely comforting. You collapse by the fire. The child is still breathing. His mother is still awake. You pull off your boots. Your toes are a color you don't love. Someone wraps them in warm cloth. No one asks what took you so long, but someone hands you a cup of warm broth and says, Skadi walks near the trees tonight. Skadi, the Norse goddess of winter and hunting. A cold giantess in furs and frost. You nod. That feels about right. Historians still debate how real these gods were to the Vikings, literal deities or cultural metaphors. But here, in this longhouse, full of smoke and coughing and garlic paste, the line between myth and truth is thin. You whisper thanks to Skadi anyway, just in case. By now, you no longer wake up from the cold. You just rise into it, like it's part of you now. A second skin, thin and brittle, but yours. The shock is gone. The rebellion is gone. It's no longer how cold it is, it's simply that it's still. You sit up and flex your fingers. The fire is down to embers again, but someone's already tending it, coaxing little flames from tired peat bricks. You don't know who it is anymore. Faces blur together. Everyone looks equally frozen, equally tired, equally done. But today feels different. Not warmer. Don't be ridiculous, but lighter somehow. There's movement. Whispered words. Preparations. A kind of hush that isn't about sickness or sorrow. Something's happening, and then you hear it. Yule. Someone says it like a promise, like a spell. You blink. Of course. It's midwinter. The longest night of the year has arrived. And with it, the ancient Viking festival of Yule, the ritual celebration of the turning point, the moment the dark begins to shrink, even if only by a heartbeat. You're not sure how they measure time anymore. There are no calendars carved into the walls, but they know. These people feel the seasons in their marrow. The preparations begin in that quiet, exhausted way people do everything in winter. Slowly, steadily, without complaint, someone drags out a cured ham that's been hanging above the rafters for weeks. Another brings forward a sack of dried berries and nuts. A woman pulls from under a bench a small bundle wrapped in fur. Inside, a wooden bowl carved with runes, painted red with crushed berries. It's beautiful. And then comes the log. A large, gnarly chunk of wood oak, maybe dragged into the center of the longhouse and laid beside the hearth. You hear the word whispered again. Yule-log. Historians agree the Viking Yule tradition predated Christian Christmas by centuries. It wasn't about trees and presents. It was about survival. About marking the deepest point of winter and daring to say, we made it this far. The log is rubbed with oils and herbs. Someone murmurs blessings over it, words that sound half remembered, half invented. It's then pushed carefully into the fire. The flames respond instantly. The room glows. For the first time in weeks, you feel actual heat. Not just tolerated warmth, but generous crackling heat. It touches your cheeks, your fingertips. You inhale, and the smoke smells like pine and sage and something older. Then comes the food. It's not much, but it's more than usual. Stew thick. With meat, a flat cake sweetened with honey, a handful of dried apples, some berries rehydrated and glistening in a bowl. And mead. Of course, you drink. It's stronger than last time. Someone definitely added something spicy. You don't ask. People begin to speak, not quietly, not muttering. They talk, like the silence has finally thawed. A man stands and tells a tale about Thor catching the sun and slamming it back into the sky with his hammer. The children gasp and giggle. A woman counters with a darker tale of a wolf god chasing the moon across the longest night. No one laughs at that one. It lingers, and then the singing got low at first, uneven, then fuller, layered. Harmonies appear, like cracks in the ice. You don't know the words, but you hum anyway. The rhythm pulls you in. You feel your body sway. You feel human again, and for the first time, you realize something vital. They're not just surviving winter. They're fighting it with every laugh, every story, every sip of fermented whatever this is. Yule wasn't just a party. It was a ritual of defiance. The world outside may be frozen, but in here, life burns, weakly, fiercely, warm with meaning. Quirky fact: some Viking Yule customs included hanging animal bones in trees, lighting all hearths at once, or even burning. Straw goats. No one's burning a goat tonight, but one of them does get a berry crown. You're not sure if it's symbolic or just someone being weird. Either way, it's festive. Later, they begin the toasts, 3 of them. Always 3.1 to the gods: Odin, Thor, Freyr, Skadi too, whispered respectfully. 1 to the ancestors. Names spoken with care. You don't recognize them, but the weight of memory makes your throat tight. And the 3rd, to the future dot, to the sun returning, to the thaw, to next year. You raise your cup with everyone else. You don't know the words, but you feel them. Outside, the wind howls, but it doesn't feel victorious tonight. It feels shut out, kept at bay. The longhouse glows, full of breath and warmth and people who refuse to let the dark win. You eat more than you thought possible. You laugh. You feel your toes again. Someone tosses another log into the fire. It sparks upward, crackling, like applause. And for the first time in this endless winter, you believe in spring. You wake to the scent of smoke and sweet spice. Your cloak is tangled around your legs, your fingers still sticky with honey from last night's cake, and your throat dry from a little too much mead, though you're not sure if it was joy or desperation that kept the cup circling so long. The Yule log has burned down to embers, a long line of glowing red across a bed of black ash. The room is warm, not just not cold, but warm. The kind that wraps you gently instead of biting your toes off in your sleep. People are moving slowly this morning, but not with dread. More like the heavy comfort of full stomachs and decent sleep. You sit up, and a woman hands you a cup of hot broth without a word. It's thick, seasoned, and glorious. You nearly cry. Outside, the snow is still piled high, the wind still. Hisses at the edges of the world, but something has changed. The longest night is over, and now, you endure. The mood is different now. Not festive Yule was only a pause, but purposeful. A new rhythm settles into place. Everyone has work to do, and no one argues about it. The energy isn't bright, but it's solid. Like boots dug deep in the snow, you're given tasks. First, sewing. No, not glamorous, but crucial. Wool mittens, torn cloaks, holey socks, everything needs mending. You're handed a curved bone needle and a scrap of thread spun from the fluffiest. Sheep you can imagine, assuming that sheep lived a very stressful life. You prick your finger 7 times in the first 20 minutes. Still, you get the hang of it. Stitch after stitch. Quiet work beside the hearth. The sound of thread pulling through fabric, the only measure of time. Then comes the carving. A man teaches you how to smooth wood with a small blade, shaping spoon handles and pegs, and because the children demand it. Little animals, you're not good. Your first carved goat looks like a sad dog with a growth problem. They love it anyway. These are the days of indoor jobs. You stay busy, not because it's thrilling, but because idleness is dangerous. Not to the body, but the mind. You sweep, you stitch. You stir soup. You even help scrub the floor with snow and ashes, which somehow works better than it sounds. The mixture lifts dirt and leaves a faint scent of pine-smoked soap. You'll take. It. Every day blends into the next. The snow stays. The cold stays. But now you have tasks. A pattern. And the longhouse becomes a factory of quiet movement, spinning, weaving, repairing, making. These aren't hobbies. These are lifelines. Idle hands don't survive winter. Even the children work. One girl is taught how to twist cord from animal sinew. Another grinds dried herbs into powder with a stone. The boys carve toy swords, which immediately become real weapons in a sibling war that ends when someone accidentally sets a mitten on fire. Even that's handled calmly. A quick scold, a shrug, a new mitten on the to-do list. Quirky fact, Viking. Families often kept crafting tools in the longhouse year-round, and winter was prime time for repair, trade prep, and even innovation. If you invented a better fishhook in January, it meant a better life come spring, and amid all the work. People talk again. Not stories, not sagas, just talk. About neighbors, about whose goat keeps escaping, about the man who swears he saw a frost spirit dancing on the roof one night. No one believes him, but they enjoy pretending to. Someone starts carving a new board for Nefertov, the Viking strategy game, sort of a Norse chess. You try to play. You lose, repeatedly. The old woman teaching you never smiles. But you're convinced she enjoys crushing your hopes with tiny wooden pawns. At night, the fire glows, and someone always hums. There's not enough light to do detailed work after dusk, so people settle into rest. One child combs another's hair. A man fixes the loose seam on a fur boot. You write your name into a soft wood beam with the tip of a hot iron stick. It feels like you belong now. Historians still wonder how structured Viking households were during winter. Did they assign tasks rigidly? Or did everyone simply know what had to be done? The evidence points both ways, but here, now, the structure feels natural. If you don't do your part, someone suffers. So you do your part. And you find, somewhere in the endless snow, a rhythm. It's not happy. It's not easy. But it's survivable. And some days, that's more than enough. You lie down one night, exhausted but calm, and listen to the fire crackling, the wind muffled by walls, the breathing of people who've stopped calling it cold, and just call it home. You're not sure when winter ends, but you know now you can make it. There's a new sound tonight. Not the wind, not the fire, not the usual chorus of goat muttering and children snoring. It's a voice. Soft, careful, almost theatrical. Someone is telling a story. You shift under your blanket, stirring just enough to see who's speaking. It's the old man near the hearth, the one with the carved staff and the voice like splintered oak. He hasn't said much before, but tonight, something's different. His words stretch across the longhouse like warm broth, slow and steaming. Filling the space between the shadows, everyone is quiet. Even the animals. You don't speak. You don't move. You just listen. It begins, of course, with a hero. They always do. A young warrior from a fjord so deep it touches the roots of the world tree. He sails into a storm, fights off a sea serpent, finds a cursed ring, falls in love with a woman who speaks to the wind. Standard stuff, but it's how he tells it. Each word lands with rhythm, like a drum under snow. The firelight flickers on the storyteller's face, catching his eyes at just the right moments. So they seem to spark like coals when the plot turns. The others are enraptured. A child's mouth hangs open. A woman who hasn't smiled in a week lets out a snort of laughter when the hero gets tricked by a goat. You even hear one of the chickens let out an approving cluck. And here's the thing you realize, slowly as the tale unfolds, storytelling isn't entertainment here. It's survival, not of the body, but of the mind. The nights are long, the cold is relentless, the food is repetitive, and the danger outside is always waiting. But in a story, anything can happen. You can travel to golden halls. You can trick a frost giant. You can sail to the edge of the world and come back with a treasure and a song. You look around and see it on every face, the same relief you feel. This is how they endure. Historians often describe the Vikings as oral storytellers, keepers of sagas, myth weavers. What's debated is when these stories were told. Some believe they were reserved for feasts, for victories, for fireside nights in better seasons, but others suggest the long winter nights were their prime stage, when memory stayed sharp, when stories stitched people together, when the warmth of a tale replaced the heat the fire couldn't give. You believe it now. The story twists again. The hero is lost in a blizzard, betrayed by a friend, nearly swallowed by an ice bear with glowing eyes. Someone gasps. The children huddle closer. Even the grumpy man who never talks leans in, and then salvation. The hero remembers his mother's words. He lights a fire with frozen moss and finds his way home. He doesn't win gold. He doesn't slay a dragon. He just survives the night. And in the longhouse, everyone exhales, because that's the real victory, isn't it? The story ends not with glory, but with the quiet return to a warm hearth. A few moments of silence follow. Then someone claps just once. A soft sound, but it echoes like thunder in this sacred hush. The storyteller nods once, closes his eyes, and leans back. His role for the evening complete. The room feels warmer, more connected. You look at the others again. Their eyes are brighter now, their shoulders looser. Even the goat seems less judgmental. Someone tosses a log on the fire. Someone else hums a familiar tune, maybe a lullaby from the story. Maybe something older, and you think of the power. That just filled the room. Not fire. Not food. Not words. You imagine that boy who lived the story, the hero from the fjord, and how many versions of him exist in other minds now, traveling into other homes. The story doesn't end with the storyteller. It ripples outward, carried in memory, shaped by voice. You lie back down, straw poking into your shoulder, and stare at the dark ceiling beams. You think about the stories you'd tell if it were your turn. Not just about the cold, but about the tiny victories. The bitter broth that became a meal. The slipper you sewed. The girl who laughed when your wooden goat fell over sideways. You're not the same person who first stepped into this longhouse. That version of you couldn't sit still. Couldn't imagine a night without screens or light or purpose. Now, you know better. Sometimes the purpose is this. Listen, share, survive. The fire cracks softly. Someone coughs. The storyteller clears his throat just once. Maybe another tale is coming. You close your eyes and hope it's about the sun. The fire is lower tonight. Not out, never out, but reduced to a gentle flicker. Like the longhouse is exhaling after a day that asked just a little too much. You lie in your usual corner, cloaked in wool and goat hair, listening to the creaks of wood and the slow rhythm of sleep settling over the others. The baby is finally quiet. The old man hasn't moved in hours, his staff leaning beside him like a loyal dog. But something's happening. There's a feeling in the air. Ritual. Not feast. Not celebration. Something older, thicker. The woman who never smiles rises first. She moves slowly, deliberately, gathering bundles of dried herbs from a shelf you hadn't noticed before. One is mugwort, another is thyme. There's also something bitter and sharp, maybe yarrow dot. She places them in a wooden bowl, pours water from a clay jug, and sets it near the fire to steam. The scent rises into the rafters, earthy, strange, heavy. Others wake. No one speaks. It's as if the longhouse itself is holding its breath. The elder with the crooked fingers begins preparing the offering. Tonight is blot, the Viking winter. Sacrifice, not the dramatic movie version with wild-eyed shouting and thunderbolts. This is smaller, quieter. It's about marking time, about acknowledging that something larger is watching. And in a winter like this, everyone wants to be seen by the right gods. You're handed a small carved figure, a faceless human shape, rough and worn smooth from years of handling. You don't know who it represents. Freyr, Skadi, some nameless household spirit. You hold it anyway. A bowl is passed. It holds thick liquid, dark, pungent, steaming faintly. Not blood, not this time. It's a mixture of broth, herbs, and wine, stirred with a sprig of pine. Each person dips a finger, marks their forehead, then murmurs a name. The name of someone they lost, someone they hope to see again. Or maybe just someone they don't want to forget. You watch this silently, overwhelmed by the sheer intimacy of it. This isn't religion. This is remembrance. When the bowl comes to you, your hands shake. You think of names. Not from this time, not from this place. People you've known, people you miss. People who'd never survive a Viking winter, but maybe, just maybe, they're watching you endure one. You mark your forehead. You whisper. The bowl moves on. Then the fire is stirred. The Yule log's remains are pushed aside. A new piece of wood is placed carefully in the center of the hearth. It's dry, pale, and carved with runes. Someone whispers the words carved. Into it, light returns, even beneath snow. The fire catches. The room glows. And then a chant begins. Not a song, not a melody. Just voices rising and falling in slow, even rhythm. The kind of sound that feels circular, no beginning, no end. You find yourself humming along before you even realize it. The child who was sick, the one you thought wouldn't last the week, sits propped up against his mother. He's awake. Pale, still coughing, but awake. Someone slips a fur over his shoulders. He watches the fire like it's something holy. You realize it is. The longhouse is no longer just a shelter. Tonight, it's a sacred space. A womb of flame and smoke and memory. And outside, winter still reigns. The snow is piled high. The wind hisses between trees. Somewhere in the dark, wolves pace, lean and silent. But in here, you remember what it means to resist. To fight cold with ritual. To make meaning where nature only offers survival. Historians have long tried to decode Viking blots. Some were large, public ceremonies with blood and feasts and animal sacrifice. Others were domestic, private, focused on ancestors and seasons. This, what you're seeing tonight, feels like the latter. A deeply personal act wrapped in community. It isn't about spectacle. It's about anchoring yourself in time. And in this endless winter, time can slip away like steam. The chanting fades. The fire burns lower again. Someone stands and sprinkles the last of the herbal water across the threshold of the house. A symbolic barrier. Nothing enters. Nothing leaves. The woman who began it all finally smiles. Just once, a small thing, quick and uncertain, but it's enough. You lie back down and watch the smoke rise in slow spirals toward the rafters. Someone hums softly. A drumbeat begins a soft tapping against a hollow bowl. You don't know if it's a ritual or just boredom. Maybe both. You close your eyes. You feel held, not safe. Never safe, but watched over. You whisper a thank you into the furs. You don't know to whom, but it feels right. The morning begins with a hush, not the heavy, fearful hush of sickness or hunger, but a reverent one. Like the house itself is still echoing from the blot. You sit up slowly, joints creaking, and look around. The fire has burned low again, but someone left it baked perfectly. A slow amber glow still pulsing beneath the ash. The others stir, stretching limbs that haven't felt warm in days. The child who is sick is still resting, his breath ragged but steady. His mother hasn't moved from her spot. She hasn't needed to. Others have stepped in now, bringing her food, wrapping the boy's feet, replacing damp cloths. There's a strange sense of calm in the air, and then someone says it. Snow's lifting. You freeze. You step to the doorway and push back. The hide covering with stiff fingers. They're right. The sky is still gray, sure, but lighter. And more than that, you can see distance again. The heavy fog and snowblind mist that's hung over everything for weeks has finally loosened its grip. You can see the line of trees. You can see the neighbor's house on the ridge. You can see the color of the world again. Not much, just faint. Browns and frosted greens, but after weeks of white and black, it feels like a sunrise. You step outside. It's still cold. Don't be fooled. The kind of cold that kisses with teeth. But the wind has dropped, and the light feels hopeful. You aren't the only one who notices. Soon, everyone is up and moving. Boots pulled on, mittens stitched with fresh thread. The men haul out buckets. The women untie what's left of the roof bundles. A few of the children are even led outside to stomp circles in the snow like tiny, wool-clad WHIRLWINDS. It's errand day. The first one in weeks. You're sent out alone. You join a small group, traveling to a farm 2 valleys over. There's talk of fresh game, smoked eel, maybe even some traded cloth. You walk slowly, the snow crunchy but packed. Your boots don't sink as far now. Your feet are still cold, but you can feel them. And that's progress. On the way, you talk. It's not about anything deep. Just simple things. Who fixed the leak in the roof? Who lost their gloves? Which goat absolutely cannot be trusted? It's amazing what passes for news when the world has been reduced to 4 walls and a fire. At the neighboring farm, you trade dried berries for a bundle of reeds and a small pouch of preserved eggs, carefully smoked, each one wrapped in a thin twist of wool. You're also given the best gift of the day, a scoop of salt. You feel like you've just been handed a crown. On the way home, someone starts a song. It's half mumbled, half laughed through, with a chorus that includes imitating a drunk sheep. For reasons no one explains, but you join in. And for a while, as you cross the snow-covered hills under that pale blue sky, you feel alive again. Historians often point out that the Norse saw winter not as a season, but as an enemy something to outwit, endure, and eventually defeat. This day feels like a tiny, stolen victory. A good errand. A warm fire. A clear sky. That's what winning looks like in the Viking North. Back at the longhouse, there's actual laughter again. The eggs are shared, each one cracked carefully in 2. A pot whisked with snow and herbs. You don't expect much, but the taste is magic. Warm, savory, and different. After weeks of barley and fish and thin broth, it feels like luxury. The salt is sprinkled into stew. Not much, just a pinch. But everyone notices. The flavor sharpens. You almost cry into your bowl. You sit near the fire, hands wrapped around the cup, watching others do the same. People lean into each other. They speak without whispers. Someone starts carving again, this time not a spoon, but a bird. You can tell, because this one actually looks like a bird. There's even planning now. Someone mentions that if the snow keeps thinning, they'll head to the coast soon. Trade for whale meat, or sea salt, or just stories. There's a rhythm again. Ah, pulse under the snow. Evening comes, but no one's afraid of it tonight. The fire is fed earlier, larger. More wood is used still carefully, but with less panic. The longhouse glows golden again. Not like Yule, but not like the first days either. Something steadier, more lived in. Deserved. And then, once the bowls are clean and the boots are drying, someone says, a tale. They look to you. You blink. Me? Someone nods. A few others smile. You freeze. You're not a storyteller, but you've been here. For weeks now, you've felt the cold in your teeth. You've held garlic to a sick child's chest. You've watched frost swallow the world, and you're still here. You clear your throat, and you begin. You tell a story, not a saga, not a myth, but something from your own memory. A story of a warm kitchen in another time, of a mother stirring soup, of a dog who tried to steal bread, of laughter so full it filled the ceiling beams. You change the names. You soften the ending, but you see it in their faces. They understand. And when you're finished, no one claps. They just nod, like you've just helped push winter back one more inch. The next few days pass in a strange blur of repetition and renewal. You've fallen into a rhythm so steady, so necessary, that anything outside of it feels like fiction. There's fire to tend, food to stir, mittens to re-sew again, and now, surprisingly, stories to tell, because you told one, and now they expect more. No pressure. You're not a skull, not trained, not born with a saga on your tongue, but somehow the others lean in when you speak. You're not sure if they want your stories or just a story. Either way, you deliver. Stories of places they've never heard of, towns with glowing lights and noisy carts, houses where you press buttons and water gets hot. They look at you like you're describing a fairy tale. And honestly, in this cold, this smoky room full of shuffling boots and fur-wrapped goats, it does feel like magic, but your magic is limited, because the food is running lower again. One morning, you're asked to help with a supply count. The root cellar, really. More of a pit lined with stones, is cracked open with some effort. Inside, there's less than hoped. The apples are soft. The onions are sprouting. Some of the fish smells. Ambitious. The woman counting next to you makes a face and mutters something you translate loosely as, it's not a feast if it fights back. Still, everything usable is salvaged. Nothing is wasted in Viking winter. Nothing. Even bones are boiled again. Bread crusts are dried into tooth-breaking snacks. The last of the milk is stretched into watery porridge, with enough salt and ash to make it almost interesting, and so the meals shrink. Slowly. Imperceptibly. Unless you're paying attention. But you are. You notice how people serve each other first now. The elder gets the deeper spoonful, the child, the meat chunk. You get broth and a piece of fish so thin it might actually be a rumor. No one complains, because hunger here doesn't come all at once. It settles, quietly, like a fog behind your ribs. Distract yourself by fixing things. You patch the hole in the sleeping corner where the wind had been sneaking in. You carve pegs for hanging cloaks. You twist rope from fraying leather strips. You even manage to make another wooden goat that almost stands upright. It becomes a running joke. You place it near the hearth with great ceremony. Someone adds your previous, more unfortunate goat next to it. Someone else puts a carved spoon beside them. A new ritual is born, the offering of the wonky goat. Laughter erupts. Real, belly-deep laughter, and for a brief, shining moment, you feel full again, not in the stomach, in the soul. Then the winds return, not louder, just sharper, colder, and the sky goes dark again for a full day without lifting. The gloom settles heavy as stone. One of the hunters doesn't return that night. No one panics, yet. But the fire is fed more often. Just in case. The next morning, his brother prepares a sled. You're not asked to help. You're asked to stay, because they need you here now. Not just as a body, but as part of this fragile web of hands and stories and almost goats. You nod. You don't argue. You help sweep instead. You help stir. You tell another story. This one is about a summer. You describe green trees, warm ground, a lake so clear you can see fish dancing beneath your toes. You describe a meal with too much food, breads and fruits and cold sweet drinks you don't have names for in their tongue. You see their eyes close as they imagine it. Someone sighs. And then someone else asks you the question that cuts a little deeper than you expect. Did you miss this before you had it? You pause, and you say yes. Yes, you did. Because in your world, where everything is warm, fast, filled with noise and lights and screens, you missed this without knowing it. This simplicity, this nearness, this quiet fight to survive. The hunter returns that night. Alive. Frozen, tired, dragging a sled behind him with a deer lashed across it. He says nothing. He just nods once and falls asleep mid-sit. They carry him to the firs. The deer is skinned, cleaned, carved. Every part used. That night, there is meat. Not just scraps. Slices. Bites. Flavor. You chew slower than you ever have in your life. The fat melts on your tongue. The silence in the room is thick with gratitude. Someone cries quietly. No one says a word. The fire blazes. The wonky goat watches from its perch. And you think, maybe this is what surviving means. Not just making it through, but making it matter. You dream of warmth again. Not fire this time, but sun. Real sunlight. Golden, heavy, draped across your face like honey. In the dream, you stretch your arms and feel grass beneath your hands. Not straw. Not frozen dirt. Grass. Then you wake up to the goat licking your face. Charming. You push it away gently and sit up. The weight of winter settling back onto your shoulders like a familiar, uninvited cloak. The fire is still going small but steady. Outside, the wind has died down, leaving behind an eerie kind of silence. Like the world's waiting for something. You're not the only one awake. Others have risen quietly, like they're afraid to disturb the calm. You wrap yourself in your best not quite warm enough cloak and slip outside. Your boots crunch across the snow. And then you see it. Tracks. Fresh ones, leading away from the longhouse. You squint toward the tree line. Something feels off. You call out. No response. Inside, you rouse the others. A young man is missing. No one knows when he left. Maybe during the night. Maybe at dawn. He took a knife, a cloak, and according to his sister, a jar of mead. Panic doesn't rise quickly here. This kind of thing happens. Cabin fever. Long silence. Quiet unraveling. You don't always see it coming. Still, someone prepares to follow. And against every better instinct, so do you. You volunteer before thinking. Before remembering just how easy it is to get lost in the woods. before remembering that the last time you left the house alone, a goat outsmarted you, but you go anyway. 3 of you set out. 2 men from the house and you, the outsider who somehow became a part of this frostbitten ecosystem. The snow is packed tight but uneven. Each step is a gamble. You follow the prints, winding through trees frosted in white. Birds chirp above, rare and tentative. The sky is surprisingly clear pale blue, like washed linen. Then you see it. A cloak, half buried in a snowdrift. Empty. You stop. The others don't panic, but their pace quickens. You follow the new tracks now lighter, staggered, messy. They wind through a patch of brittle underbrush and end near a stream. And there he is. Sitting on a rock. Not dead. Not even injured. Just still. He doesn't look at you right away. One of the men walks over, crouches beside him, puts a hand on his shoulder. No anger, no lecture. Just presence. The man whispers something you don't catch. Something about listening to the trees. Eventually, the young man nods, slowly, like someone waking up. And just like that, you all turn around and head home. No one says much on the way back. The snow crunches underfoot. The air is cold, but not cruel. And you think about what would have happened if no one had noticed he was missing. You think about the quiet breaking point, the way winter doesn't scream. It whispers, it seeps, and sometimes it steals someone not with fangs, but with silence. Back at the longhouse, people part to let him in. No questions. Someone hands him a bowl. Someone else gives him a dry cloak. No one says the word lost. Number. One says broken, because in this house, you only need to do one thing. Come back. Later that evening, you sit by the fire. The boy who is sick now leans against the wall, carving something into a scrap of bone. He still coughs, but he smiles when he sees you watching. The hunter who returned 2 days ago sharpens a knife, humming tunelessly. The mother of the boy who wandered watches the flames like they're about to speak, and you rest your hands in your lap, still gloved, still cold, and you think winter doesn't just kill with hunger or frost. It breaks people by making them feel forgotten. And in this longhouse, the only thing more important than meat, fire, or fur is each other. You've seen it now. You've felt it. And you wonder how many people in your old life had a place to come back to. How many people disappeared in silence. That night, when the fire dims and everyone finds their corners of warmth, you stay up a little longer. Just watching. Just listening. In case someone else forgets their way back. The days are stretching again. Not warmer, don't be ridiculous, but longer. You notice it first when you go out for wood and the sky is still tinged with light. A watery, pathetic sort of blue, like a bruise that's almost healed. But light is light, and everyone in the longhouse treats it like a miracle. Someone even says it aloud. Spring will come. And for once, no one laughs at them, because it's not hope anymore. It's a fact now. A whisper in the soil. A vibration in the walls. The way the snow isn't quite as deep against the east side of the house. The way the goats bleed a little. Louder. The way your skin still cracked and windburn starts to sting a bit less. But there's still a long way to go. The food is stable again, thanks to the deer and some smart rationing, but it's not bountiful. The firewood pile is acceptable. The longhouse still smells like sweat, stew, smoke, and stubbornness. And in the corner, the youngest member of the household, a girl of maybe 6, is building dolls from straw and string. You watch her work. Curious, she's precise, methodical. She knots the string around the arms just so, then braids the hair out of flax. No one taught her, at least not recently. It's like the knowledge lives in her fingers. When she finishes the third doll, she brings it to you. "This one's you," she says, completely serious. You look down. The doll has a lump of bark for a torso and a crooked smile carved into its wooden face. It's wearing a tiny red scrap of cloth you recognize from the hem of your old sleeve. You smile. Genuinely. "Thank you," you whisper. She nods and scurries away, leaving you holding a version of yourself smaller than your hand dot. It's strange, isn't it? You've done so many things to survive this winter. You've hunted, hauled, stitched, shared stories, and yet this tiny handmade offering is what brings you closest to tears, because it means you've become part of the furniture, not a guest anymore. Not even the strange outsider who eats too slowly and stares too long at butter. Now, you're someone whose doll gets made. That night, you tuck the little figure into the fold of your cloak. A totem, a reminder. You think of it as your own personal household god. Saint survived the first 4 weeks. The laughter comes more easily now. Someone makes a joke about your goat carving legacy, and you feign outrage. Someone else tries to carve a better one, but ends up with something that looks more like a sad bear. You name it, born the disappointing. The child giggles so hard she drops her bread, and just like that, the longhouse feels like something more than a bunker. It feels lived in, theirs. Talk now of rebuilding the fence, mending the roof, planning for spring planting. Not if. When. The certainty feels fragile, but everyone's holding onto it like a fragile egg in mittened hands. Historians still argue whether Norse longhouses were simply homes or also spiritual centers. From what you've seen, they're both. The heart of survival isn't just structure, it's shared rhythm. The fire gets fed, the stew gets stirred, the stories get told, the laughter returns. Over and over, you find yourself doing strange things to keep the rhythm alive. Like waking up earlier to feed the goats before anyone else stirs. Like mending someone else's boot when they're asleep. Like slipping a piece of dried apple into a pocket you know belongs to someone too proud to ask for more, and none of it feels burdensome. It feels right. That winter hasn't ended. Not yet. The cold still bites. The wind still scream. But now you bike back, one evening, while the wind howls and snow rattles against the timber walls like impatient fingers. The boy with the cough asks you something. "Do you think the gods like us?" You look up, startled. He's wrapped in 3 cloaks and sipping something hot from a carved cup. His cheeks still flushed from fever or fire or both. You consider the question. And then you say, "I think they like stories." He nods thoughtfully. "That's probably why they haven't squashed us." "Exactly," you reply. "We're too entertaining." He grins, then coughs, then falls asleep halfway into his stew. And you sit there, watching the fire, the flickering shadows, the worn edges of survival, and think, you don't have to be strong every day. You just have to stay. And if you're lucky, you get a straw doll named after you. The snow begins to rot. That's the word they use, rot. You'd expect something more poetic from a people who named their swords and composed death poems on the battlefield. But no. It's just the snow is rotting. And you see what they mean. It's no longer crisp and white and light like powdered sugar. Now it's dense, gray, pocked with holes where water has begun to pool beneath the surface. The top layer melts during the fragile daylight, then freezes again at dusk, creating a brittle crust that cracks with every step. It's disgusting. And glorious, because it means winter is dying. You take your first step into a patch of it outside the longhouse and sink ankle deep into slush. It soaks your boot instantly. 10 weeks ago, you would have sworn aloud. Now, you grin. Wet feet? That's practically tropical. Everyone's mood shifts. Even the goats seem sassier. Children are allowed outdoors longer. More boots are lined along the walls, drying in pairs instead of mismatched singles. A woman hangs out woolen blankets on a line, letting them crisp in the thinning sun. Inside, things change too. The meals stretch a little further. That deer from earlier, it keeps giving. The final bones are cracked and boiled into a broth so thick you could stand a spoon in it. Someone calls it liquid gratitude. Even your fingers hurt less. You realize this when you slice a turnip and don't drop the knife once. It's a small miracle, but along with the relief comes a new danger. Ambition. People start moving too fast, too eagerly. You see one of the older boys trying to carry a whole beam by himself and nearly slipping on the icy path. Someone else tries to wade across the creek, which is almost almost. A leg goes in. Screaming ensues. Luckily, it's only to the knee and not the waist. Everyone teases him mercilessly. But they also build a makeshift bridge from branches and old planks, just in case. Because spring, despite its promises, is sneaky. It tempts you, makes you think it's safe, then hits you with one last frost just to prove a point. Historians say Norse spring was the most dangerous time of all, not because of raiders or wolves, but because hope made people reckless. You believe it now, so you take your time. You help chop the roots. You walk carefully. You refill the woodpile without tripping over the goat, who now answers to the name Bjorn too. You sleep a little lighter now. There's less worry about the fire going out, fewer coughing fits, more laughter. The longhouse doesn't feel like a shelter anymore. It feels like a home. You wake one morning to the sound of birds. Not one, many. At first, you think you're dreaming. But then you hear them again, chirping, warbling, arguing in that way birds do when they think no one's listening. You rush outside, boots half-laced, and look up, and there they are, dozens of them. Little brown things hopping from bare branch to bare branch. The snow beneath them is melting in slow streaks, like tears down old stone. You are stunned. These are just birds. You've seen thousands in your life, but this time they're proof. Spring isn't a theory anymore. It's real, peeking through the cracks, testing the wind. You walk to the edge of the clearing where the trees thin and spot something even more absurd. Colon moss. Just a patch. Bright green and ridiculously alive. It's so bright. It looks fake. Like someone spilled paint across the ground. You crouch beside it and press your hand down. It's damp, soft, warm. Even, for the first time in months, you remove your glove and let your skin touch the earth. It doesn't bite. You return to the longhouse with a handful of moss and a story on your lips. Someone sees the green and gasps like you've brought back gold. You place it on a wooden plate in the center of the room, and it becomes a shrine. A ridiculous, squishy, vibrant shrine. The child places your straw doll next to it. You say nothing. You just smile. That night, someone plays music. Not much. Just a few low notes on a stringed instrument that's been silent since Yule. The sound is rough like old wood and sore fingers. But it sings, and people sway with it. The fire flickers, casting shadows like dancers on the rafters. Someone even tries to dance. It's terrible. Everyone claps anyway. You sit by the fire, cup in hand, moss on the plate beside you, and feel something shift in your chest. Not relief, not joy, Something deeper. Survival becoming life again. You made it this far, and somehow the hardest part wasn't the cold. It was learning to trust that warmth could return. The melt begins in earnest. You hear it first, small trickles running beneath the snowbanks, like whispers in a language only the earth remembers. Then you see it, puddles forming in uneven spots, dark patches where the snow recedes, revealing damp brown soil and leftover bones of firewood long since burned. Mud becomes the new hazard. You thought you missed dirt, and you did. But you didn't miss this kind, the sucking, clinging, ankle-deep swamp that threatens to eat your boots and dignity. Every trip to the creek feels like a tactical operation. Every return a quiet victory. People begin to stretch. Literally. Limbs long unused in full motion test their strength. Children play louder. Goats roam further. You even catch the stoic elder smiling once before he notices you looking. Spring is not officially here, not by the Norse calendar, but the mood says otherwise. You help lift the longhouse door off its hinges for repair, and the entire wall breathes air. Crisp, but no longer deadly. You forget how much you missed the feeling of wind that doesn't punish you for existing. They start airing out the bedding. Everyone smells better. Not good, exactly, but better. The straw is replaced. Old furs are shaken out. The longhouse begins to shed its winter skin, piece by slow, muddy piece. You're not just surviving anymore. You're rejoining the world, and you're given a job. A real one. Not patching or watching the fire. Not babysitting Bjorn too, who, by the way, has chewed a hole in your boot. This time, you're handed a tool. A spade, to be exact, and a plot of dirt. You've been drafted into spring planting. You stare at the bare earth like it might bite you. It doesn't. It just lies there, stubborn and soaked, waiting for your hand. So you begin, and somehow it's soothing. Turning over soil, breaking clumps, making neat lines. It reminds you of stirring soup or threading a needle. One small action repeated until the shape of something new emerges. A woman shows you where to place the seeds, onion, barley, flax. You follow her lead, mimicking the rhythm. She hums as she works. A lullaby for the dirt. You ask her how long before anything grows. She shrugs. If the gods are kind, a few weeks. You glance at the sky. It still looks like wet wool. Maybe? Historians argue whether Norse households planned their planting with careful ritual or simply went with instinct and luck. Watching this family, you decide it's both. 1 part planning, 2 parts hope, and a dash of sheer stubbornness. By midday, your back hurts in a new way, not from cold, but from effort. It feels amazing. You earn your place at the stew pot tonight. They give you the thick ladle. That's how you know. And that evening, the longhouse is louder. Not with shouting, but with talk. Future talk. Plans. Mentions of the market that will open once the passes thaw. Of wool to spin. Of fishing nets to repair. Of going somewhere. Someone even says the word boat. And your ears perk. They notice. You don't know if it's teasing or invitation. But someone pats your shoulder and says, "You'd make a shay." Terrible oarsman. You reply, "Only if the boat's pointed north." Laughter. It feels good. You sleep deeper now. The cold doesn't seep through your bones the same way. The fire doesn't need feeding every hour. You've even stopped checking for frostbite in your sleep. And in your dreams. You see green. Not the pale moss of earlier, but real green. Fields, trees, something like the memory of summer returning piece by piece. When you wake up, you feel lighter. You go out to check your little patch of dirt. and though nothing has sprouted, it somehow looks ready. The kind of ready that comes from being turned, softened. Open. You press your hand to the soil. It's no longer cold, and neither are you. One morning, without warning, the ice on the creek breaks. Not with a bang or a dramatic crack like the movies, just a low groan. A sigh that ripples through the trees, followed by the sound of running water. You almost don't recognize it at first. It's been so long. But there it is. Movement. The kind that doesn't hurt. The whole household crowds around the banks, watching the water rush free again. A boy tosses a stick into it and cheers when it floats instead of getting stuck under a crust of ice. You'd think someone just saw a rainbow and a unicorn holding hands. You don't realize you're smiling until someone elbows you. You're starting to look like us. You glance down at your clothes-patched tunic, fur-lined boots, soot-smudged sleeves. It's true. You've lost the last traces of whatever you used to look like. Your reflection now would probably scare your old self. But here, it fits. Later, while helping haul buckets from the creek, you notice something odd. Your footsteps are no longer silent. The ground squelches. The slush squeaks. You make sound now when you walk, and somehow, that's the most human thing in the world. You see it everywhere. People moving faster, talking more, stretching their voices after months of murmurs. Even the goats are louder, especially Born 2, who has discovered the joy of headbutting barrels. You nearly fall into the mud laughing when he startles himself. The longhouse begins to empty more often. People leave for longer chunks of time to check traps, to cut wood, to scout the trading route. Someone finds a rabbit. Another, a broken cart abandoned in the snow. You help mend a wheel with strips of hide and some rope that absolutely shouldn't work, but it does. It's not pretty, but it rolls. And you realize everything here is like that. Not pretty, but still rolling. You start to ask questions. Where do people go in summer? What's the trade route like? Who sails and who stays behind? They answer with half-dash stories. Of markets in distant fjords, of sea voyages and raiding seasons, of coins that don't melt in your hand, of spices and swords and sheep that wear bells. You start to imagine it. Not just surviving the Viking winter, but following it. What would it mean to stay? To be here when the world turns green? To sail? Even? You think about it at night, lying on your straw mattress beside the hearth, watching embers blink like sleepy stars. The idea wraps around you gently, like the heat from the fire, slow, steady, seductive. And then one evening, you're asked a question. Will you stay for planting? Simple. Casual. But it lands heavy, because you hadn't realized until now that you could leave, that you weren't a permanent fixture here, that the door, muddy and misshapen though it may be, is still open. You could go. You could walk back the way you came. Now that the snow's melting and the creeks are clearing, you could chase summer, chase comfort. Return to noise and neon and hot. Water on demand. But you don't answer right away, because something inside you has changed. You think of your wonky, wooden goats, of your moss shrine, of the doll the little girl made, of the deer that saved the household, of the boy who wandered and came back, of firelight and silence and the first bird of spring. And you realize this isn't just about enduring cold. It's about who you are when the cold is gone. Historians still argue whether Viking winter survival depended more on group dynamics or personal grit. After living it, you know the answer is both. You needed these people, but you also needed to become the kind of person they could need. So you look up at the person who asked you, and you say, yes, I'll stay for planting. and something shifts in their expression. Not surprise, not relief, just quiet understanding. The next day, they show you how to weave a seed basket. It's clumsy at first. Your fingers rebel. But the rhythm is there, buried beneath layers of stubborn modern muscle memory. You'll get better. After all, you've already survived winter. Everything after this feels like growth. The world outside is turning soggy. Snowbanks collapse into themselves. Trees drip steadily, their limbs bowed under the weight of thaw. The air is heavy with the scent of old wet things, damp bark, loosened moss, long-hidden animal remains now. Surfacing like secrets, no longer content to stay buried. You've taken to waking earlier. Not by choice at first. Someone always seems to need something at dawn, but eventually it becomes habit. You like being outside before the others. The mist curling off the ground. The silence that isn't really silence anymore. Birdsong, goat hooves clopping, the rustle of rodents remembering how to be rodents. This morning, you spot a worm in the dirt. Just one, but it coils and wriggles like a banner of life. You say good morning to it. No one hears you. You're glad. Inside, the longhouse is shifting. Not physically, though the smell is, thankfully, less pungent these days, but in tempo. Things happen faster now. Conversations overlap. Tools are past mid-step. There's a pulse again. Someone builds a new bench outside the doorway. Not because the old one broke, but because it's time. A place to sit and watch the world start up again. You sit there often. Today, you help carry stones from the creek to shore up the path. The ground is still slippery, but less treacherous than last week. You nearly lose a boot in the process. Bjorn too tries to eat the laces. You both survive. Later, someone hands you a comb made of bone. It's yours, they say. You look like a hedge witch. Fair. You run it through your hair that night and wince at the knots. Months of wool and wind and stress don't untangle easily. But the comb works. Slowly. Gently. Everything does now. You find time to listen. To the stories ones they didn't share in the depths of winter. About summers past, raids survived, love lost. A woman tells you about her brother who sailed west and never returned. She shrugs. Maybe he found something better. A man talks about a bear that walked right into the longhouse once years ago. They fed it stale meat until it left. You laugh. He doesn't. You're not sure if he's joking. One of the elders shows you a tattoo, a faded serpent across the forearm, inked with fishbone and ash. He grins. It kept me safe from bad spirits. You ask, did it work? He looks around. I'm still here. That seems like enough. Historians still debate whether Norse tattoos were common or rare, sacred or decorative. In this longhouse, it's just part of someone's skin-like scars or freckles or calluses. Even the children change. They're louder, more daring. One of them tries to build a sled out of scrap wood and nearly careens into the water trough. You help him rebuild it, and together, you create a monstrosity that barely slides but makes everyone cheer when it doesn't fall apart immediately. Progress. In the evenings, you eat outdoors more often. Sitting on the new bench, watching the sun dip below the tree line. It's not warm yet, but it's not punishing, and when you return inside, the fire is smaller. Not because fuel is scarce, because it's not needed as much, and that alone feels revolutionary. One night, you wake to silence, not the fearful kind of winter, but a full silence. A living silence. And you realize you're comfortable, truly, deeply, in body and in mind. You're not flinching anymore, not from cold, not from memory. You get up, wrap yourself in your cloak, and step outside. The sky is clear. No snow, no wind, just stars. Thousands. Of them, glittering like frost on velvet, you sit on the bench, alone, but not lonely. The straw doll still lives by your bed. The goat still plots against your boots. The people inside are asleep, safe, alive, and you think, this isn't the end of the story. It's a chapter turning. You survived a Viking winter night. And now, you're ready for the thaw. The ice has all but vanished now. What remains is tucked into shadowy corners, shy, shrinking patches beneath the eaves and in the crooks of the trees. You catch them melting hour by hour, their edges seeping into the soil, reluctant relics of the season that nearly took you. Your boots now sink into mud instead of snow. A different sort of challenge. The longhouse smells of damp wool, roasting roots, and something sweeter sap. One of the elders has tapped the birch trees, and the sap they collect is boiled down into a thick, earthy syrup. It takes forever. It's barely sweet. It's still glorious. They let you stir it. That alone feels like an honor worthy of a poem. Speaking of poems, the old man with the serpent tattoo recites one around the fire. His voice is gravel and wind and sleep. The words are about loss and light returning, though the rhythm is choppy, and no one knows if he's making it up as he goes. You suspect he is. Still, no one interrupts. Outside, the fields are being tilled. Not with big iron tools, just sticks, bone hose, and willpower. Everyone's hands are busy. Dirt under every fingernail. You've stopped noticing yours. You're assigned to help repair the animal enclosure. The fence is half collapsed. The gate won't latch. And a very smug chicken has made its nest on top of a broken post like it owns the place. You get pecked once. You hold no grudge. While you're patching the fence, a young woman next to you starts humming. You hum back. Neither of you knows the song. Doesn't matter. The chickens seem unimpressed. Bjorn too headbutts the post. Business as usual. And then comes the fish smoke. It hits you on the breeze, rich, heavy, unmistakable. Someone's caught something big. You follow the scent to find two boys hauling in a salmon the size of a toddler. Everyone gathers, cheering like it's treasure. It is. The fish is hung, split, smoked over a new fire rigged just outside the longhouse. The smell soaks into your clothes. You don't care. That night, the stew tastes like triumph. The little girl slides into your lap, hands sticky with sap syrup, and asks, "Is the winter really gone now?" You consider it. No, you say, but it's lost. She nods like that's good enough. It is. Later, as you mend the last of your socks, finally, you notice something else. Light, soft, golden, creeping through the cracks in the walls before. You even rise. You wake with the sun now. Not before it. You're becoming a creature of the season, just like everyone else. Following the warmth, answering the rhythm. You don't fight the weather anymore, you listen to it. Historians argue whether Norse seasonal life made people fatalistic or just flexible. You decide it's both. You've learned to bend, not break. You've learned when to hoard and when to hope. And now, you begin to dream of sailing. The others speak of it, often plans for summer raids, trade voyages, even visits to distant kin. You watch as they oil their gear, check ropes, whisper over maps. One night, you're asked directly, would you sail if you could? And this time, you don't hesitate. Yes. Because the idea of open sea, of stars above and salt wind on your face, it doesn't scare you now. It stirs something ancient in your bones. Not adventure, exactly, but continuance. A path forward. You've survived a winter most people would write off as fiction. Why stop now? You sleep with that thought like a warm stone in your chest. You don't know where the next season will take you, but you know this. You are no longer a visitor. You are of this place, and it's only just begun to bloom. The day you plant your first real seed is unremarkable to everyone, but no music plays. No one stops to watch. The goats don't even seem to care. But you kneel in the soft, still cold earth, pinch a bit of soil between your fingers, and drop a tiny speck of life into the hole you've dug. You cover it with care, not too tight, not too loose. Just enough to shield it from the sky and let it breathe. It feels absurd, honestly. All this surviving, all this frozen hunger, all this scraping and waiting and hoping, just to reach this moment, to put something into the ground instead of trying to dig something out of it. Yes, this is the whole point. That seed, whatever it is, becomes your quiet defiance against the death you've tasted. Your promise that you didn't crawl through ice and shadow just to stay afraid of the sun. You sit back on your heels and exhale slowly. It's warm enough that your breath doesn't show in the air. A marvel. By now, your hands are rougher, your shoulders broader, your face wind-scoured and wiser. You've learned how to start a fire with damp wood, how to braid rope from bark fibers, how to share silence without making it awkward, how to be part of a world that doesn't care about your resume, your screen time, or your coffee order. You've also learned that Viking life is rarely cinematic. It's slow, dirty, muddled, but it means something. You have a place now. The goats expect you. The longhouse has adjusted around your presence, the way a bed eventually takes the shape of its sleeper. You are not essential, but you are here. And that matters. A group prepares for a journey tomorrow downriver to a trading spot once blocked by ice. You help them load bundles of wool and jars of sap syrup. One man tests the oars with an approving grunt. You linger at the boat's edge. He looks at you. You nod. You sure? He asks. You glance back at the longhouse, at the bench, at the patch of dirt where your seed lies dreaming. Not really, you say. But I think that's the fun part. He grins. And then, you sleep. One more night in the longhouse. One more meal with these people who kept you warm when the world wanted you dead. One more fire-lit evening of wool mending and fishtailies and sweet smoke-laced air. One more chance to soak in the truth of your transformation. You once stumbled into this place unprepared, freezing and soft. Now you leave it capable. You survived a Viking winter, and maybe more importantly, you let it change you. You understand now what they never taught you in school, that history isn't just dates and kings and sieges. It's the rhythm of wood being chopped, the frostbite at the tip of your nose, the girl with the moss shrine, the goat who hates your boots, the fire that only stayed lit because someone stayed up to feed it. You were part of it, and it became part of you. That's the boring truth, and the most beautiful one. You've made it, not just to the end of this tale, but through every cold gust, every frozen bowl of stew, every toe-numbing midnight fire check. And now, the longhouse is behind you. Ahead lies a path that squelches and curves and glimmers muddy. Yes, but open. The ice is gone. The light stays longer. You walk slowly, deliberately, boots pressing into soft earth that remembers. Every footstep. The air is quieter now, not because the world has gone still, but because you have. You don't rush. You don't shiver. You simply exist in this strange half-place between history and dream, between Norse winters and your warm pillow. Let that sensation linger. Let your breath slow. Let your mind soften like soil in the sun. You've wandered far tonight, through smoke and frost and stories whispered in darkness. You've carried buckets, built fences, mended socks, and planted seeds. You've earned rest, and you've earned it like a Viking, not with fanfare, but with endurance. So now, tuck in. Let the goats quiet down. Let the hearth dim to a soft glow. Let the wind whisper its last lullaby across the thatched roof, and let your eyes drift shut, knowing you survived the impossible. History has never been so human. Or so warm.